Hello everyone, and welcome back. Since our last visit, I've spent many hours honing my alchemical craft. Through the rush of everyday life in Tamriel, it's sometimes difficult to remember to stop and smell the comberry flowers. If you do though, it can be very rewarding, both in its intrinsic value and mystical properties. I've noted all the potion making knowledge there is to date and would love to share it with you. Without further ado, let us begin our journey through the alchemy of the Elder Scrolls. In Tamriel, the term alchemy refers to something a little different than external histories would suggest. The original definition of alchemy goes back to Eastern pseudoscience and mythology. It concerned the refinement and production of more pure versions of different natural materials. The most well-known example of this is the study of chrysopia, or the transmutation of silver into gold. The study of chrysopia was both literal and figurative, with people seeking to expand its products into monetary ventures and beyond. One of the most notable goals was creating the Philosopher's Stone, a mineral from which elixirs of immortality could be born. Here we come a little closer to how alchemy is handled in the realm of Tamriel. More specifically, the process of alchemy deals with the combination of natural ingredients within certain apparatus in order to make potions and poisons. All of these products come in a range of mystical effects, both positive and negative, and are all dependent upon what is mixed together and how. The refinement of alchemy as a magical science was solidified by Asliel Dyreni, a high elf from Somerset Isle. After discovering some medicinal effects of certain plants in the Merethic era, Asliel quickly moved himself into a position of authority. His skills were tested when vampirism plagued his homeland. In response, Asliel formulated a potion that poisoned the blood of the drinker. This was harmless to the imbiber, but as soon as a vampire sank teeth into them, it was good night. The vampire would fall dead and the victim would be unharmed. So great were his skills in making alchemy a broadly accepted science that he was actually inducted into the Psijic Order, a group of wizards and researchers dedicated to the mystic ways. Another renowned alchemist, a Breton named Gryon Vardengrote, actually created a potion of immortality. This took an untold number of tries, however, and by the time he realized he had stopped aging, he was unsure of which concoction was to blame. To this day, he studies different materials in the hopes that he will remember. And so it was that alchemy gained traction in many locations throughout Tamriel. These applications were not only devoted to potion making, however. In fact, the simple brewing of different beverages could also be considered alchemy. The production of simple beer involves milling, boiling, fermentation, and distillation of different plants in order to produce the beverage. The same could be said for basic teas, many of which are simply the combination of different plants through which hot water is poured. Outside of Tamriel, the effects of this form of alchemy are very real. In fact, much of our remedies could not exist without it. For example, the commonly known acetaminophen comes from coal tar. Better yet, the ascomycodal penicillium is responsible for penicillin, an antibiotic medication that derives its effects from the penicillium's natural immunities. On the topic of beverages again, we could look at teas and coffee. These contain caffeine, which acts as a stimulant, leading us to become very alert and productive. Both of these come from plants, the Camellia sinensis and Coffea arabica. I myself admit to drinking lots of tea when I'm producing treatises such as this. Alchemy is just so intriguing and amazing that I needed to explore it further. Now I would like to share my findings with you. But first, I should brew a potion that will further enhance my focus as we travel. We begin with distilled comberry juice to restore any magica drained from the production of the treatise. Next, we add ground elf cup caps from Cyrodiil. This will enhance my strength as I journey physically through the process of ingredient acquisition. Next, we add ground shock beetle from the Grazelands. This will enhance the speed of production, that way this project does not take half a year to complete. To thicken the mixture and allow for definite combination, we add resin from the trees of the Ascadian Isles. This will also restore health and speed, nullifying any negative effects of the other ingredients. And finally, we mix in ectoplasm from a lost spirit laid to rest. Please do not write with inquiry as to how this was obtained. I assure you that the family of the spirit paid for its banishment, and this was conducted in accordance with their wishes. Now we drink.
Ugh.
Delicious. Now that this concoction is imbibed, I will quickly explain the rules of our venture. Firstly, I will only discuss the most important effects of each ingredient, seeing as our fair realm is home to hundreds, perhaps even more, potential reagents. Second, every ingredient will be foraged or hunted organically if possible. Some reagents have sources shrouded in mystery and must be purchased from elusive and resourceful shopkeepers. Finally, the locations of each ingredient will be conveyed according to where this alchemist found them. This is not indicative of the only location in which they exist, simply one where they are in fact known to reside. With this, we will journey through Tamriel. Let us begin. In the 389th year of the Third Era, the knowledge of alchemy was not very widespread. Because of this, adventurers could often find lost potions in dungeons or purchase them from knowledgeable parties. However, it was very rare for said adventurer to ever know how to concoct a brew themselves. 16 short years later, the practice of alchemy was becoming a little more well known. There were many shops which sold ingredients for adventurers to come across. Still, the actual processes of alchemical production were a closely held secret, known only to a relatively small circle of mystics. In fact, it was not uncommon for them to only offer their services to members of specific factions, even including the reviled Dark Brotherhood. Still, the passing of 16 years did much to familiarize adventurers with the appearance and properties of certain ingredients. This would play a role in the widespread adoption not long after. In a surprise to many, including myself, there was in fact a handful of people in the late Second Era, specifically year 864, that knew how to at least sublimate ingredients. The most notable of these were probably the evil Slode Nagasta and the noble Redguard Cyrus. Focusing on the hero, we have historical accounts of his ventures in Stros Makai, just off the southern coast of Hammerfell. There was a mages guild he often visited there, and one which was very well acquainted with a handful of ingredients.
Hello, Felicia.
Hello again.
What's for sale?
Magical potions of all sorts.
This owed in no small part to the efforts of the Archmage.
Leave me, please. I have much to do.
Combining a mixture of various liquids with different alchemical ingredients produced certain sublimations with beneficial properties. For example, the stocks of the Mages Guild were so abundant that they allowed endless use from Cyrus and other visitors. When mixing things such as orc's blood, the sources of which have been lost to history, probably for the better, with an organ sac from a pig, one could create a potion of iron skin and strength. If drank purely on their own, the few solvents known to the region to hold alchemical potential were difficult to ingest, to say the least.
Ugh, that's nasty. My. That is truly vile. Damn, that's foul.
In terms of solvents, we had a small handful.
It's spider's milk. It's orc's blood. It's ectoplasm. It's hist sap.
These could be mixed with the following ingredients for a very limited selection of effects. Most combinations resulted in nothing usable. Amber, Daedra Heart, Lich Dust, Pig Sack, Saint's Hair, Salamander, Spriggan's Ear, and Unicorn Horn. From what we know now, this limited understanding coming from the island of Stros Makai cannot be discounted in the overall proliferation of alchemical science. Hey everyone, real quick, if you find yourself enjoying the video and maybe even learning something new, please consider subscribing and liking for more. This helps immensely as a small channel, and I appreciate it more than you know. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the video. Though I have not been inducted into the Psijic Order myself, I have made some connections with certain individuals that have allowed me the option of time travel. Using this, we can visit the once pristine lands of Vardenfell, a large island north of the mainland of Morrowind. This land is exceedingly abundant with alchemical reagents if one knows where to seek them. In fact, the practice of alchemy was widespread here even in the 427th year of the Third Era. It was taught in the Mages Guild, and the practice could be supplied by many shops in the region. Here, the skill was known to be governed by the intelligence attribute, owing to its specificity and dangers of miscalculation. The craft was much more refined than in the previous eras we discussed. Most any adventurer could get their hands on a set of alchemical apparatus with which to conduct their experiments. This often included 4 specific pieces, all of which I will describe to you now. Firstly, a mortar and pestle were completely required. This was the basis of any good poultice, allowing the user to grind and mix ingredients with ease. They could then use the invigorated reagents in mixtures of water, the purity of which was said to also affect the outcome. The mortar and pestle are often made from various materials, more expensive as you move from clay to stone, then stone to metal. These enhancements also make sure that bits and pieces of cheaper apparatus do not flake off and find their way into the mixture, becoming unknown reagents and bringing all sorts of consequences. Moving on, we have the alembic. This piece consists of 3 parts, which include the cucurbit, the cap, and the receiver. The cucurbit is a pot which the mixture is placed within. This is heated from below by flame. The cap fits over the cucurbit to receive the vapors from the mixture, and then sends them down a hose or pipe into the receiver. The receiver follows its name and houses the resultant mixture of liquids and vapors from condensation of the original mixture. The sum of these parts, the alembic, reduces the strength and duration of all negative effects, quite literally burning them out of the mixture. Next we have the calcinator. This piece is fairly simple and only concerns the heating and perhaps boiling of an ingredient up to right below its melting point. This is done to enhance all effects, both positive and negative, refining the ingredients placed within. Finally, we have the alchemical retort. This functions somewhat similarly to the alembic, distilling solvents in order to bring only the most refined, pure gases and liquids into the final product. Heated from the bottom plate, the mixture of ingredients sends vapors upward which are collected and sent through the tube into a new vial. The use of a retort enhances all positive effects in both strength and duration. When used all together, this apparatus serves to create fantastic potions. Better yet, although cumbersome, it can be used on the go. This means adventurers can create potions at will, immediately combining new ingredients to learn their shared effects. It is wonderful news to the botanist, biologist, or even the wild camper. Notice though that I have only really touched on potions. There are indeed poisons that can be created, however the weaponry of the region is often incapable of maintaining residue for long periods. This means coating a weapon is often folly, because the mixture will simply slide off before use. It says nothing of poisoning food, of course, but that is fairly rare outside of certain shadowy factions. Now that we have discussed the basics, our real adventure is about to begin. First, we will forage the various regions of Vvardenfell, then move on to the mainland and even the island of Solstheim. After this, we will begin hunting the various creatures that offer ingredients worth the trouble. There are over 100 reagents to be found. Let us put our boots on and venture out into Morrowind. The southwestern region of Vvardenfell is known as the Ascadian Isles. It plays host to giant mushroom trees known as Emperor Parasols, as well as many lush grasses and other vegetation. The land is fertile enough to grow many different staple crops of the island, and plantations abound as there is much money to be made. The proximity to the ocean seems not to be a hindrance, and some say the magic of Vivec himself aids in prevention of saltwater intrusion. It is usually sunny here, with occasional rainfall. The air is humid, just perfect for the Emperor Parasols and the many other life forms that abound. Very similar to common yams outside of Nirn, this tuber is an abundant food crop. It offers fortification of intelligence and strength, as well as disease resistance and, strangely, the magical detection of keys. This food may be one of the primary reasons so many Dunmer are intelligent enough to become skilled mages. The black anther is named for its potent reproductive organ atop purple flowers. If dusted into a solvent, this can produce potions of fire resistance. Also, this is one of only 2 ingredients that can make light potions, the other being red lichen. The spontaneous creation of light is indeed a useful effect for late-night study sessions. The green and purple comberry is said to be bitter and is used as the base of a brandy native to the region, as well as grief, sheen, and sujama. Sujama is made from barley, comberry, and lemon. The brandy of the region shares no common magical effects of the comberry, so they must be boiled out at some point. The same goes for the other drinks. The effects of the comberry are magic restoration, fire shielding, and reflection of oncoming spells. The corkbulb plant, a common crop in the Ascadian Isles, produces a root which is said to be tough and fibrous. Hence, it is used in lieu of trees wood. Just eating one can cure you instantly of paralysis. If mixed properly, they can restore one's health, fortify their luck, and provide them with a lightning shield. They are also used by marksmen to create both arrows and bolts. All of these effects lead the corkbulb to be a very lucrative crop. The beautiful yellow flowers of the gold cannet can be used for potions of strength restoration. These are fantastic for any and all dungeon delvers, though particularly to grave robbers and hunters of necromancers. Aside from alchemical uses, I tend to give these flowers to friends as gifts in my travels, such as Anasi and Pelagiad. Heather is a plant which produces pink flowers all throughout the southern regions of the island. If harvested, it can be used to magically reduce one's physical burdens. A fragrant plant, perfumes of this variety are also sure to enhance one's standing in social settings. The anther of the common pink willow flower is another useful ingredient in alchemical pursuits. This segment of the plant houses lots of pollen which can coat the tongue if not properly mixed into dishes. It is often used in medicinal potions for treatment of disease and paralysis. The ashlands make up a sizable portion of the island of Vardenfell, including all areas surrounding the Great Red Mountain. It makes sense then that the region is primarily grey and ashy, resulting from the minor eruptions and volcanic activity. Here and there are pools of boiling tar and small smokestacks, and, rarer than these, are the plants and animals which exist in the area. Many of them stick close to the edges of the hills, making use of deposited ash as a material from which to derive substance. This ash is also compounded by common storms, including those which contain the evil magics of the blight disease. This region is no joke and should be tread very carefully, or not at all, by regular wanderers or outlanders. Perhaps the rarest harvestable ingredient in Vardenfell, the black lichen exists only upon some rocks in the province. Lichen, a conundrum to some, is actually just a symbiotic combination of algae and fungus. The fungus offers structure and placement as well as minerals externally digested from the rock it is attached to, while the alga offers energy from photosynthesis. This combination is definitely not a plant, not the least of which because it is unicellular. However, bryophytes are believed to have evolved from algae, so the more you know. As far as how the ingredient functions alchemically, it offers frost resistance and cures to poison. Found in very few places, the red lichen is just as rare as black. There are only 25 known locations from which to harvest it on the island. Along with black anther, red lichen is the only ingredient for creating light potions. It can also cure common diseases, but there are far more abundant resources to be used for such a case. Though it looks rough and dry, alchemical scathecraw is actually a selection of soft tissue from inside the main plant. It is not a common foodstuff, but can be used in potions for restoration of willpower and cures to poison. These help immensely when encountering allet in the region. Azura's Coast is the name given to the southeastern collection of islands. Few people live in these areas as they are difficult to traverse, and as such, there is little development other than Sadrith Mora. It is often cloudy, but doesn't seem to rain very much. When it does, a few vegetative species suck up all that they can. As a result, there are not many species to be found here, though the ones that do exist can be procured for some useful alchemical effects. Crushweed has a sticky resin that seeps from the leaves, which may be used as glues for different crafts on the island, especially by the Ashlander tribes. These can hold clothing, structures, weapons, etc. together for repeated use. If one can avoid gluing their fingers together, they can mix the fibers with other ingredients to make potions of luck restoration and fortification of personality. The marshmallow plants grow tall along the coastlines. Their riparian nature allows them to make use of both terrestrial and aquatic materials. Although one would expect them to be quite salty as a result, their pulp is actually quite sweet. When mixed with other ingredients, they can offer health restoration and detection of enchantments. These are abundant and should be harvested if seen, as they are one of the few commonly available reagents for health restoration. The muck found in sponges throughout southern Vardenfell is toxic and must be prepared correctly if one is to consume it. The slime is very fibrous, and harvesters use something called a muck shovel in order to retrieve it. If done successfully, the ingredient can be used to make potions of key detection and common disease cure. An easily recognizable quarry, this plant thrives on the southern half of the island of Vardenfell. It grows along the water's edge and serves as a staple export due to its enjoyable taste and nutritious efficiency. It has a host of positive effects, such as restoration of health and fatigue, as well as fortification of magicka. It is also fermented and used to create mazte, or used in baking to create local bread varieties. The Bitter Coast is the first region typically encountered by newcomers to Vardenfell, or those visiting from the mainland. The region is swampy and sour, muck ponds abounding, periodically breached by pneumatophores of the trees. These allow for gas exchange in an area with tightly packed and muddy soil. In these pools are also vibrant blue mushrooms, plants, and green lily pads. Although the ground is quite uneven, there are a handful of settlements in the region. All around these are tall swamp trees with hanging vines, unfurling ferns, and exciting fungal species which make use of the damp, warm conditions. The ampule pod is the immature form of the draggletail plant. Ampules are typically glass capsules filled with liquid. In this case, we can guess it's filled with swamp water drawn through the xylem of the plant. Eating this would be like consuming nature's stinky gusher. However, this would immediately grant the ability to walk on water, so it may be an even trade. If mixed in potions, it also offers animal detection. It can create a paralyzing poison, so be careful when choosing reagents to mix this with. The Bungler's Bane, an orangish shell fungi in the Bitter Coast, can only be used for potions that dispel negative effects of magic on the imbiber. That, or it can be mixed into a poison which drains all abilities related to movement. Hence, it is the Bungler's Bane, as only a bungler would eat it and suffer its effects. The coda flower is the fruiting body of Draggletail. They glow in the dark when intact. Also, the word coda means a concluding remark, action, or ending of a segment, which fits as this is the final life stage of the Draggletail. The only positive effect of this ingredient is levitation, one that makes sense as the plant rises high above the murky pools of the swamps in order to bloom. A morphologically similar fungi to the Bungler's Bane, the Hyphaphacea also grows as a bracket fungi. Its name is actually somewhat funny. Hypha is basically hyphae, which are the branching filaments that form mycelium, the base structure of a fungus. Fascia refer to bands of connecting tissue, so this fungi may as well be called mycelial mycelium. As far as its alchemical effects, the only positive is detection of enchantment. The others drain luck, agility, and fatigue, so experimenters should be careful with this ingredient. Like the coda flower, these mushrooms emanate a bluish glow around themselves, similar to the Mycena chlorophyos, which use oxyluciferin to attract bugs which will carry their spores to distant locations. They can also be eaten while one is swimming so as to make use of their magical water-breathing capabilities, though of course the professional alchemist would concoct something to last much longer than a few seconds. They are also one of a few ingredients that are capable of producing a pure poison and should be ingested with antidotes at the ready. The spore pods are the tips of the sloth fern, the prematurely harvested fiddleheads of the plant. These only serve one useful purpose, the detection of keys. Otherwise, they are best left alone, as the unwitting alchemist could trigger their attribute-draining poisons. One of the 4 common fungi in the Bitter Coast, the violet copernus is a useful ingredient. If brewed specifically with the luminous russula, this mushroom can create pure poison. On the other hand, it can also be eaten while deep in water, which will propel you up and through the surface. Depending on your depth, you could experience the bends as a result of rapid pressure decrease, which forms nitrogen bubbles in your blood. I recommend only using this strategy in freshwater locations. Also, do make sure to clean the fungi very well, as it is named copernus for a reason. It grows from the dung of native animal life. The northeastern regions of the island are very unique, though rarely visited by metropolitan citizens. Instead, they are populated by the nomadic ashlanders which move across them with the rains and wild game as necessary. The verdant plains are filled with all sorts of useful alchemical plants, as well as deadly beasts which feed upon these and smaller animals. Some of these deal poison damage to victims, so remedies should be maintained in one's supplies. The undulating hills are a true quarry to those willing to brave the harsh wilderness. The leaves of the hackalow plants are invigorating, sweet, and enjoyable. They have a high price, so harvesting them from the grazelands is a quick option to resettle your pocketbooks. If used in potion making, they offer restoration of luck and fatigue, as well as imbuing the drinker with powers of water breathing. Growing in the grazelands, this wild grain is so numerous that it may begin to outcompete other species. In fact, it is the most abundant vegetation on the island of Vardenfell. Some say eating too much of it can lessen your intelligence. This, however, is only an old folktale, most likely told to the Ashlander children to stress the importance of variety in diet. It can, however, restore one's health and fortify their willpower, 2 great effects for any alchemist. Sometimes considered a continuation of the Ashlands, and for good reason, the grey wastes of Molag Ymir stretch toward the southeastern reaches of Azura's coast. The key difference between this region and the contiguous Ashlands are the numerous surface-level lava rivers. As such, it is wise to bring potions of fire resistance if visiting. Throughout the region are also dead, blackened trees and other remnants of previous life rendered dead through volcanic flows. Of course, there do exist the hardy plants of the Ashlands as well, each managing to somehow persist in this difficult, craggy region. Growing in the drier areas of the island, The fire petals offer resistance to said fire as well as spell absorption. I imagine these to taste a bit spicy, having a level of capsaicin to discourage predators from eating at their costly growths. They are easily recognizable for their pretty red petals. The snaking roots of the trauma plant are used to create teas which include something akin to caffeine, as they can rouse the drinker to become more active. They can also offer levitation when mixed with cliff racer plumes, an incredibly useful potion to keep on hand. Red Mountain, the central volcano around which all of Vvardenfell's other regions exist, is a sector to be avoided at all cost. There are near constant storms, the winds of which carry magical blight diseases in their gale. The sickly beasts also offer their own dangers. There are few, if any, worthy alchemical ingredients to be found here. If one is going through the ghost fence for any reason, it is imperative that they first mix potions of disease and blight resistance, two effects that will easily be learned in this guide. Still, this alchemist recommends against visiting the region at all. On the northern coast of Vvardenfell is a strange, rocky region known as Sheogorath, named most likely after the Daedric prince Sheogorath. Traveling here is very difficult without the aid of swift swim or water-walking potions. The region is mostly uninhabited due to these travel constraints, and only one port exists in the town of Dagon Fell. Across the main contiguous island are a few Dwemer ruins and other interesting dungeons, but nearly all of them are inhabited by dangerous creatures. Of particular interest to me are the unique mushroom trees to be found here, somewhat reminiscent of those seen in some areas of Azura's coast. They have yet to be named or alchemically described, and such research should be conducted at the earliest possible chance. The West Gash is an interesting region stretching northwest from Balmora and north of the Bitter Coast. This region is known for many types of trees and fields of flowering plants. To the north are more key features, namely natural rock bridges that confound even the smartest geologists. The largest mining operation of the island, the Caldera Mine, exists within this region. Though ebony can be found elsewhere, this is indeed a major store. Other than that particular ingredient, there are plenty of drought-tolerant plants to be found, along with the solitary hunters known as Nixhounds. They do often carry disease, and so potions of resistance should be maintained when entering these lands. Although bitter is in the name, these sound like they would make great garnishes or spices for different dishes. They restore intelligence after a long day of study, and can also be used to make potions of invisibility, which is interesting given their blatant, strange nature, looking like a grass octopus. Chokeweed branches are most likely named after their dry and scratchy taste. If one mixes them into potions, they do offer cures to common disease. This follows, as many medicinal herbs and ingredients are in fact difficult to get down. This particular lichen, the green variety, is known as a quick cure-all when it comes to common diseases and is often used in medicine. It grows far away from the other two types of lichen and can be used to fortify one's personality as well. The rue brush is a dry, thin plant which provides but one truly useful property, a cure for poison. Other than this, the plant is but a wiry bush to be avoided. These pretty blue flowers are often found in the Ascadian Isles and West Gash regions. This alchemist uses them for a different, perhaps unique purpose. When I defeat a difficult foe in battle, or feel that they should be remembered for some reason, I will lay a stoneflower petal at their feet. These petals are incredibly resilient, maintaining their color long after death. If the wind allows it, the petals will still be in place to remind me of events in later travels. Though, for the non-sentimental of you, it should be known that these aptly named petals can be used to restore one's strength. This is immensely important, as these flowers are the most abundant source of that effect. They can also fortify magicka and personality if one is so inclined. However, as a personal gift to your mentor, please leave enough for my peculiar purpose. A commonly visited site on the mainland of Morrowind is the capital city of Mournhold. Here, a lot of the native vegetation beyond the walls is foregone in preference of imported species for the gardens. Within the city bounds, there is little that could be considered wild or natural. With every royal family comes expensive and invasive plants. In the gardens of Mournhold, the exotic golden sedge is part of a selection of imported varieties grown throughout the capital city. These are prized by warriors for their aid in attack efficiency. They also offer swift swimming capabilities. In other provinces, horn lilies are used to cure temporary paralysis sickness. They can also restore strength and endurance, aiding in the healing process. These cacti are from some far-off desert, and if prepared carefully, their spines can be used as either a means of invisibility or a strong poison. One should be careful when retrieving them, and the use of chainmail gloves is suggested. Depending on the method of refinement, the meadow rye could either greatly aid or hinder one's speed of movement. That is about all there is to say for this feather-like plant. The Nirthfly stalks can be harvested to create potions of the exact same effects as the meadow rye. As such, they could be combined to slightly heighten one's speed at the cost of some health. This speed would aid greatly in traveling the labyrinthian sewers of Mournhold. Another fine line, the flowers of the noble sedge can either enhance one's athletic abilities or poison them, depending on combinations with other materials. Both the golden and noble sedge varieties belong to the plant family Cyperaceae. It is unknown why this is called scrib cabbage. It may be a common refuge plant for the creatures, or perhaps their favorite vegetation to forage. If consumed in liquid form, it can offer restoration and fortification of agility, much like the noble sedge. The pulp of the sweetbarrow plant can cause paralysis and levitation, as well as health restoration and paralysis resistance. I imagine whoever first ate this had a wild period of intoxication. Who is Timsa? I have no Nirnly idea, but the flowers of this titular plant can be used to dispel magical effects, as well as offer paralysis resistance and endurance restoration. The cold island of Solstheim exists to the northwest of Vardenfell and has long been a contested space between the Nords and the Dunmer. Recent events have allowed for tentative trade agreements, such as the discovery of ebony deposits and rumors of werewolves that need hunting. The southern half of the island exists in a cool yet warmer environment than the northern. Here there are green grasses and vibrant trees, as well as common plants that grow around bases of trees and anthropogenic structures. The northern reaches of the island are completely encased in ice, covered in common blankets of snow, and are nearly devoid of vegetative life, save for the cold-tolerant trees and errant hollybush. In the snowfall, many creatures are camouflaged and easily missed. It's recommended that one drink night-eye potions in order to place themselves on an even playing field with the beasts that call this land home. Across the island of Solstheim grow a common berry plant known as holly. These provide a natural resistance to the elements when eaten, in the form of frost resistance and magical shielding. The ripened stage of belladonna is a boon to mages, restoring their magicka, heightening their abilities, and also warding off the spells of opposing mages. Unripened belladonna, although very bitter, provide the same effects as their ripened counterparts. At the top of Vitcald Peak exists the only known example of the wolfsbane, a cold-tolerant plant species. Its petals function similarly to those of the bittergreen on Vardenfell, offering restoration of intelligence and invisibility. Now that we have located and identified all the forageable reagents of the province, we will move into the hunt. There are many creatures who contain mystical properties through their natural vehicles. In order to gain those positive effects, one must often ingest some part of them, hence our hunt must begin. The hide of the giant mouth with legs, the allet, is commonly used as leather in Vardenfell, especially by Ashlanders. If used in alchemical pursuits, it can offer effects of poison resistance, telekinesis, and animal detection. The poison resistance comes most likely from the allet's natural ability to use poison in its bite. The animal detection makes sense as well, coming from the predator's hunting aspect. The telekinesis, though, is a rare effect and one that is fantastically useful for thieves and ne'er-do-wells, allowing them to move objects with their mind alone. The ash salts are crystals formed as ash deposits in crevices after blight storms. They are ironically one of two blight cure ingredients, the other being scrib jelly, making it hard to create yourself. However, it may just be necessary, as the blight is a terrible disease indeed. Bone meal is the result of grinding bones to dust. It is said to be specifically made from ground bones of a bone walker, a creature created as a flesh atronach from bits and pieces of attempted grave robbers. Though the ingredient is also found in the urns of the deceased within ancestral tombs. However one may acquire it, it can be used to restore agility and offer telekinesis. An unfortunate disease plagues certain residents of Vardenfell, especially around Red Mountain. They produce yellow ingredients, such as the corpus weepings. These are the hardened secretions of pus and other bodily fluids that fall from the necrotic bodies of those infected with corpus. The meat of the common mud crab is widely known for its sweet taste and the vague essence of seafood. If consumed, it offers a lightning shield and resistance to shock, two properties that aid it as a semi-aquatic creature during storms. It also offers restoration of luck. Like the skin of the Daedra, their hearts are similarly difficult to acquire. though they can be wrought from the bodies of Daedric enemies felled by one's hand. These hearts allow restoration of magicka as they are imbued with strong magical aura. They also offer fortification of endurance and enhanced night vision for some reason. Within the waters of Vvardenfell are the monstrous humanoid but tentacled beasts known as the dregs. If bested, their wax can be dug from between parts of their carapace. It's tough and pliable, and eating it would be like biting through a candle. However, if melted into a potion-making apparatus, it offers restoration and fortification of strength, two important effects for dungeon delvers. Throughout the ancient ruins and burial places of Vvardenfell are often restless spirits. These are sometimes hostile, protecting their local haunt. If banished, they leave behind a filmy substance called ectoplasm. This can be used in potions to fortify agility and allow animal life detection. One of the more common Daedric entities, the Flame Atronach, can be found around shrines and other dangerous locations. If bested in battle, the interiors of their bodies fall apart into a mound of small crystals known as fire salts. These can be used to make potions of fire shielding, frost resistance, and agility fortification. Frost salts precipitate from frost atronachs, much like fire salts from flame atronachs. They offer restoration of magicka, frost shielding, and resistance to fire. Both of these types of atronachs seem to mirror one another. Another bipedal creature, the guar, is commonly raised as a beast of burden, or for other means, such as a source of leather. Although this alchemist would never harm a tamed guar, there do exist wild varieties that attack on sight. Their hide can be used to fortify endurance, sensible for its purpose on their body. Also, it restores personality and can fortify luck. Across the island are large, dog-like beasts known as nixhounds. Although bug-like and containing hard carapaces, there does exist a fleshy interior. This meat is sweet and tender and is often eaten by the island's inhabitants. Strangely enough, the blighted variety tends to carry more meat, although eating this is probably a bad decision. When used in potions, it can offer restoration and fortification of fatigue, as well as magic reflection and enchantment detection. Aside from the owlet and guar exists another bipedal lizard. At least visually, it seems to be closer related to the owlet, as it has no arms, only 2 legs and a large mouth. Much like the other creatures, the hide of these beasts are used for leather and clothing. In potion making, they offer speed fortification, common disease resistance, and night eye. The speed boost and night vision makes sense coming from the essence of a predator. There exist more bug-like creatures on the island called quama. If killed, they release a coagulated, wax-like substance from their mouths known as cuttle. This cuttle is useful for a few things, including poison resistance, water walking, and water breathing. The latter 2 effects are fantastic for explorers of underwater grottos, or those who want to bypass open stretches of ocean quickly. Also coming from the quama are egg broods placed throughout their caverns. The larger of these eggs are rich and nutritious, even more so than their smaller counterparts as they've had more time to develop. They are, however, quite bulky and thus difficult for trade routes to include in their brick-and-mortar stores, hence you will likely find none in shops. If used in potion making, they offer restoration of fatigue, frost shielding, and health fortification. One negative side effect, paralysis, may come through if mixed with certain other ingredients. This paralysis could be a defense mechanism of the egg, seeing as how the scribs which hatch from them also have a natural ability to paralyze their foes. In the Ascadian Isles are large, floating, jellyfish-like creatures known as netches. Both the female, the Betty, and the male, the bull, have strong skin which can be used as leather in certain armors. It's strong yet flexible, and is prized by hunters and marksmen throughout the province. As far as alchemical use, the leather can be torn apart and mixed with other ingredients to yield potions which fortify endurance and intelligence. It can also be used to cure paralysis. In the waters of southern Vvardenfell, as well as in some grottos, there are clam-like creatures called collops. At a certain level of maturity, these collops produce pearlescent spheres. These minerals allow water breathing, which may account for how the collops gather oxygen to fulfill their biological needs. They can also offer dispelling of negative effects and resistance to common diseases of the island. Perhaps the most notorious beast to roam the volcanic wastes, the cliff racer, is to be shot on sight. Once felled, the plumes of the creature are often used in decoration, if not in alchemy. Strange note, but the cliff racer has wings that are mostly membranous, calling to question where the feather is coming from. In any case, these plumes are very useful, and often expensive as a result. They can be used to make potions of levitation, giving one the same abilities of their previous owner. Many large rats cross through the environments of Vvardenfell, as well as in basements and so on. Their meat is greasy and hard to chew. It must be seasoned a lot to taste good, but is still nutritious and not unheard of as a meal on the island. Used in alchemical pursuits, the meat contains properties of poison cure and resistance. This is great for those of higher status who would deign to protect themselves this way. In the waters of Vvardenfell are a very large species of slaughterfish, each owning razor-sharp teeth and haunting eyes. If one manages to kill them before being maimed themselves, They can harvest their blue-green scales. These can be used to restore endurance, but also to offer water-walking abilities, or swift swim in the case that it's mixed with another ingredient. These last capabilities make sense somewhat, as the fish is an aquatic creature. However, the water-walking ability seems a bit like a cruel joke. If one slaughterfish is killed, its hunter can drink its essence and render themselves immune as they hunt others. Perhaps the lowest form of Daedra from the Oblivion realms, the Scamp takes on the form of an ugly satyr. They cannot be harmed by normal weaponry, but if felled, offer a useful ingredient. The dry, gross skin of a Scamp is tough to harvest, as it requires the use of silver blades or better, due to its otherworldly qualities, but it can be used to cure paralysis and also restore strength and personality. If one cannot contain their latent evil tendencies, the death of a poor, defenseless scrib will produce a pink jelly. The gelatin is sour at best and requires one to commit unforgivable sins in order to acquire it. However, it does offer 4 beneficial properties. These include fortification of willpower, something the murderer will need in order to prevent a future mishap, cures to poison, cures to blight disease, and further restoration of willpower aid to prevent yet another atrocity. Should they take their crime even further, scrib jerky is a commonly described practical food, only when a traveler can find nothing else. They are sun-dried and chewy. With each bite, the screams of the scrib echo in the mind. Potions made from this ingredient restore fatigue as well as fortify it, and there is also the boon of swift swimming. These are all necessary for the criminal, as they'll need to escape the wrath of the gods for their heinous actions. When looking at the anatomy of the shock beetle, there's a resinous substance between the segments of their carapace that can be harvested for use in glue and manufacturing. If consumed in liquid mixtures, it can offer health and speed fortification, ironic since the shock is a very slow-moving creature. The Quama eggs are perhaps the most common type of food on the island, and are harvested from the hives of the Quama creatures. These bug-like beings create caverns and deposit eggs throughout them, allowing the eggs to gather nutrients from the soil as they grow. The small Quama egg has had a bit less time to grow than the large, but are easier to deal with when packing meals for the road. They offer fatigue restoration, but that is all. Throughout the island of Vardenfell are caves which host vampiric spawn. When defeated, their pure white eyes will roll back, and their skin will begin to disintegrate into dust. If collected, this rare material is best sold, although the purchaser may have nefarious intentions. It's said to cause vampirism, but some have apparently tasted it in the name of science, only to find themselves feeling healthier than ever. I recommend against this strategy. Much like with the other Atronach salts, this is a crystalline ash left behind from storm Atronachs, as well as winged twilights, who also hail from the realms of Oblivion. When consumed raw, it will restore one's magicka stores. If brewed into a stronger draught, it offers a boosted restoration, as well as spell absorption, allowing further storage of ability. Used in 6th House rituals, this meat seems to have come from the many poor souls who have contracted corpus disease on Red Mountain. Whether it sloughs off naturally or is purposefully removed is a mystery, and one this alchemist does not wish to solve. This bizarre selection of meat comes from macabre experiments with necromancy and Daedra worship, such as in the case of Palansour, where a group of bandits toyed with Daedric summoning scrolls. The beast got out of control and killed all but one smuggler, rending their flesh as they went. The surviving smuggler was then forced to cross-dress for the amusement of these beasts. How do I know of this exactly? Well, the search for ingredients can take you to odd places. Don't worry though, I did remove the threat and allow the smuggler to escape. Hopefully they learn their lesson. Within the sewers of Mournhold are goblins, as well as their trusty steeds, the Durzogs. When killed, they provide a gamey meat. This meat is said to damage your magicka stores, but fear not. It will only enhance your dexterity and raw power. Oh, and it can blind you. This is ironic coming from a creature with multiple sets of eyes. On the island of Solstheim exist many bears suited for the cold climate. The pelts that offer this ability are often used in armor making. In terms of alchemical use, they can offer strength fortification, common disease resistance, and night eye, a favorite of any predator species. Wild hogs roam the island as well, usually tamed by small blue elven creatures known as reeklings. These beasts, along with many others on the island, have developed a natural resistance to the harsh weather conditions. This also translates into their alchemical effects, meaning an adventurer can similarly use their leather to provide protection in both physical and magical means. In the dark ice caves of Solstheim are a scary surprise. Large creatures that seem to be the grisly mix of elephant and giant roam the shadows. If somehow defeated, the eyeball of the Grawl can be plucked out. Living in caves, the Grawl have incredible dark vision, and this can be found in their alchemical properties. The unfortunate Draugr of the island can be put down in merciful displays of combat. If killed, their bodies produce disgusting excretions of what is known as grave tar. This material offers frost resistance as well as fortification of fatigue, allowing one to travel through the difficult climate. This ingredient is quite peculiar. Only Spriggans encountered by an adventurer on one of their first excursions will be carrying it. It is unknown whether these weaker spriggans are a different species comprised of the material, but more hardened travelers will never find it by defeating their analogous tree spawn. Experiments with this material show that, along with the hollyberries, it's one of the only ingredients that can produce a poison of weakness to fire, which makes sense as both ingredients are derived from flammable plants. Hunted for subsistence, the narwhal-like horkers are generally a peaceable species that roam the frigid waters of northern Solstheim. Their tusks can be ground and used in potions to detect animals, which is great for hunting parties on long journeys. Like with the brown bear varieties, the pelts of the snow bear can be used to create armors with which to shield oneself from the brutal weather of the island. The alchemical effects are exactly the same as their southern counterpart, and, as we will see, the same as the pelts of wolves as well. Similar to the snow bears, the pelt of the snow wolf can also be made into armor. There are many common beasts of Tamriel that can also produce potions of night-eye, meaning that the hunters on this island can all spot prey from a mile away. The common wolf pelts are identical in effect to the snow wolf variety and can also be made into armor. The Nords living here must use any means necessary in order to survive the difficult climate. Apart from the usual natural materials one comes to expect in the field of alchemy, there are also malleable minerals and such that offer unique effects. Whoever tested these and discovered their qualities should be honored. Alas, we have no written documentation on these exploits. Diamonds are a very rare resource in Vardenfell, and there is only one known diamond mine, the Abalin mine. Apart from that private endeavor, diamonds can be found in Dwemer ruins as loot from their ancient plundering. If used in potions, they offer invisibility, magic reflection, and detection of keys. These diamonds are a thief's best friend. Unlike the diamonds, there are 0 emerald mines on the island. These can only be purchased or found in Dwemer ruins. Apparently, the Dwemer had extensive underground trade routes and were able to find these gems elsewhere. If consumed raw, a heroic feat, they offer fortification of magic. If brewed carefully with other ingredients, this effect can be strengthened and restoration of health can be added. Do be careful though, as their tough material can often clog alembics and lead to explosive results. The island of Vardenfell plays host to many mines, most of them containing mass stores of ebony. Outside of Nirn, this material is actually made from the hardened heartwood of trees in the Diosporos genus. Here, it is thought to be hardened magma from the activity of Red Mountain. Some more religious folk say this material is the hardened blood of the god Lorkhan, whose heart was thrown here in the Dawn era. These mines are imperially controlled, but smuggling does exist on the island. In fact, one can sell it directly to a regular apothecary with no issue. Even the imperial appointed guard will ignore the sale. This material is also used in armor and weapons due to its durability. For the alchemist, ebony offers cures to poison, frost shielding, and restoration of speed. Due to all of these tangible and intangible qualities, the ebony trade is extremely profitable. Beyond Quama, diamond, and ebony mines, there exist mines of a material called malachite, commonly known as glass. Formed in a similar way to ebony, this mineral can often be found in the caverns under Red Mountain. Although not as strong as ebony, this material is also used in forging lightweight armor and weaponry. It also has a better weight to gold ratio, making it a very expensive and profitable material as well. If secured, it can be used to make potions of fire shielding, which no doubt owes to the heat of its origins. Much like the emeralds, the rubies have no mines on Vardenfell and are found by either raiding Dwemer ruins or purchasing them from apothecaries. They can be used to make potions of feather, allowing one to carry more burdens. They can also restore one's intelligence should someone have used a dastardly spell on them, or if they contracted a certain disease, such as the chills or even Ashwoe Blight. Deep in the Dwemer ruins remain the scraps of unfinished projects. This metal is also found from defeating the ever-moving automatons left protecting the location. Only this one Dwemer relic seems to be allowed in common trade due to its apparent lack of value in academic circles. The others, including cups, bowls, etc., which could be argued to be scrap metal themselves, are indeed illegal if smuggled. If eaten raw, this material will drain one's health as it is sharp and jagged. If melted and mixed sparingly into concoctions, it can offer lightning shielding, resistance to shock, and restoration of intelligence. The shock resistance is a boon of this material, as it prevents the automatons from short-circuiting. The Dwemer were in fact a highly intelligent people. This very rare material grows under the capital city of Mournhold and is primarily used to create strong armor and weaponry, as its alchemical effects are often seen in more common ingredients. These armaments are quite durable and well worth the effort to create. This material, Stalrim, translating from Icelandic to mean steel frost, is a magical ice that exists to protect remains from disturbances, namely grave robbers. If you disturb it with a Nordic pickaxe, you can use the resultant loot to create armor and weapons. It can also be used to make potions of health restoration and frost resistance, but there are much cheaper ingredients to do this with. Hence, one should allow old bones to rest. There are some ingredients that are simply unobtainable by regular means unless one is willing to travel. Even still, some purveyors of the alchemical arts are quite stingy with their sources. As this is the case, there are many ingredients that can only be purchased directly from shops, smuggled out of reach of the Imperials, or by random loot shipment. Bloat, found in various apothecaries of Vardenfell, offers fortification of intelligence and willpower, as well as animal detection. Breaking character for a moment, this plant is supposed to grow from a plant in dark and wet locations, most likely in caves, but the harvestable nodes were never placed in-game. This means you can only purchase them from shops. This is what they looked like in the construction set. Alright, back to our adventure. Ow. Bread, a common product of other regions, is only to be found as loot or purchased in the region of Vardenfell. If one knows the recipe with salt rice flour, it is actually quite easy to bake it, especially if they're skilled in flame magic. But alas, who has the time? The only known restocking salesman of bread in Vardenfell is Agning, a Nord who runs a tavern in Ebonheart called Six Fishes. Perhaps he has the best trade connection in terms of bread. In my notes, I've listed this as being plant and fungal, as it requires yeast to grow. It only offers restoration of fatigue, an effect commonly seen in staple foods. This ingredient, the Daedra skin, is very rare and can only be found by visiting an apothecary, any of which are very protective of their sources. They offer fortification of strength, swift swimming, and cures to common disease. An entity that creates medicines, hiding their resources from the public that could definitely make use of them. Never seen that before. These are the blackened hearts of an Ashghoul, a poor individual who has been corrupted by the nightmarish diseases of Red Mountain. Breaking character again, it's unfortunately not coded into the game as being such and's only found at vendors. Before traveling to Mournhold and acquiring some golden sedge, it is impossible to find another ingredient with which to make use of the attack fortification property. However, they can be used to cure poison if mixed with another good reagent. Grave dust is a strange and rare material, thought to be the refined form of bone meal. This process must be very secretive indeed, as the material is only accessible by purchase from certain apothecaries on Vardenfell. If used in potions, it can offer restoration of endurance and cures to common diseases. The exotic drug called moon sugar grows in cane grasses native to Elsewhere, home of the Khajiit. In Morrowind, which is part of the Empire, it is outlawed due to its narcotic effects. It is still smuggled for high amounts of coin and can be found in many locations on Vardenfell. Of its native properties, one can fortify their speed or dispel negative potion effects. However, when mixed into the stronger drug known as skooma, it has far enhanced effects, those we will describe a little later on. If one is needing a quick pick-me-up, they can always travel to the island of Solstheim and visit Uncle Sweetshare. This Nord is very giving, and his gifts are always well received by friends. Also, he sings along as he offers them to you. How kind. Resin comes from various plants of Vardenfell and is used to seal and cure both chitin and bone mold armaments. It may also be used in construction of furniture and even homes. When brewed as a potion, it offers restoration of health and speed, as well as common disease resistance. The restoration of health, and specifically disease resistance, could relate to how trees put out resin in order to harden and protect certain parts of their body from fungal and insectoid pathogens. This strange ingredient is described as tasting like cheese, and comes from different beetle-like creatures on the island, most notably the Shalk of the Grazelands. However, the adventurer cannot harvest it from the beetles, as the method to do so is a closely kept secret. As such, it must be purchased from natives who understand the methods best. This material offers fatigue boons, as well as feather and telekinesis, two great effects for thieves. Slowed soap is created from crushing the early grub-like forms of the Slowed race. Although this alchemist would like to give them the benefit of the doubt, the Ilk of Nagasta are often a despicable and evil race, devoid of any mercy toward men and mer. Hence, none should feel bad for harvesting this ingredient. The Slowed were mostly wiped out in the past, and so the breeding locations are kept secret by harvesters, meaning the common adventurer must either purchase the soap from them or steal it from elsewhere. Their primary effect, draining personality, probably comes from the immoral owner's own essence. The other effects include a restoration and fortification of agility, as well as a fire shield. These connections, if there are any, are just as enigmatic as the Slowed race themselves. The final, and perhaps most confusing ingredient in our Morrowind journey, is meteor slime. This mysterious ingredient heavily resembles scrib jelly, even as far as the alchemical effects go. However, it is a renewable resource coming from this plant that Jabasha is slowly uncovering the science behind. Dubbed Charles, this test subject somehow secretes the jelly-like substance from its leaves. Once Jabasha understands the mechanisms, the scribes of Vardenfell will have one less thing to worry about, as he will no doubt begin selling the material in bulk. Now that we've covered all of the alchemical reagents to be found in Vardenfell, let us briefly look over the multiple alcoholic beverages of the province. This beverage can only be found in old 6th House dens and is not worth drinking in the slightest, though it does sell for 1500 gold, so it's worth looting if seen. This brandy is imported from Cyrodiil as its name would suggest. This most likely comes from farms in the West Weald, as that is the alcohol capital in the Imperial Province. It has only positive effects, fortifying willpower and endurance massively. Unknown to some, Flynn is also an import from Cyrodiil. This liquor can be used to fortify one's willpower and strength, and is a favorite of adventurers that cannot decide what loot to leave behind. Grief is a common comberry brandy, and offers strength fortification at the cost of agility. It's great for a quick and dirty bar fight, a favorite of retired guards. Mazte is Vardenfell's very own beer. It's made from fermented salt rice, and is also quite tasty compared to brews of other regions. It fortifies strength at the loss of willpower and intelligence. This drink is best shared in good company, on warm nights under a blanket of stars. Sheen is also made from comberry, but is a wine instead of a brandy. It fortifies endurance at the cost of intelligence. Skooma is the refined form of moon sugar, an illegal drug under the Empire. Many people lose their livelihoods to the concoction. Because of these reasons, most salespeople in Morrowind will not even barter with you should they smell it on your person. Sujama is a Dunmerry liquor made from comberry, barley, and lemon. It's great tasting and fortifies one's strength by incredible amounts. However, it also drains their intelligence for a full minute, a compounding effect with each round. Although only 7 of these bottles exist in total, they're legendary for their exquisite and mysterious taste. No one can place a finger on what ingredients were combined to form it. As a result, each bottle goes for 500 gold. I know this is not a beverage, but in order to keep my folios orderly, I need to place it within another section. The Telvanni bug musk is a very useful cologne. It's made from the scent glands of certain bug-like creatures on the island, and when sprayed on one's person, it produces a surprisingly enjoyable scent. This allows for a temporary enhancement to one's own personality, affecting their relationships with neighbors and strangers alike. Now, if only the Telvanni would reveal its method of creation. So now you know where and how to obtain all the reagents within the province of Morrowind and surrounding areas. However, that is only step 1 of the alchemical process. Next, you must acquire the apparatus. There are a few ways to do this, and the choice is yours. We've discussed how to use these tools already, but we've not discussed the topic of wartcraft, or the process by which the effects of reagents are discovered through simple taste testing. This, although interesting, is less recommended, especially considering your education today. As an example, I'll brew here a few potions, including all manner of element shielding, levitation, and light production. The mixtures are simple to follow and should be noted if you'd like to use them in the near future. As you can see, alchemy is an extremely rewarding field of study. So much so that there are those even more informed than I. For example, we can visit a Bel Credit in Valenvarian, an old Dunmer stronghold. She is the most talented trainer of alchemy in the province, and one from which this mentor has learned a great deal. She is so talented, in fact, that she has been written into books, something we can discuss now. There are 5 books related to alchemy in the region. 3 of them are strictly non-fiction, 1 is questionable, and the other is definite fiction. We will begin with the non-fiction stories. The Alchemist's Formulary, by an anonymous author. Healer's Recipes. Healers should all know the recipes for the following popular potions. Fortunately, in most cases, the ingredients are common and cheaply obtained. To restore health to the afflicted and wounded, combine in equal parts 2 or more of the following cheap and common ingredients: marshmarrow, wickweed, corkbulb root, and salt rice. Marshmarrow is an important crop of the Ascadian Isles, but it also grows wild in the Grazelands and on Azura's coast. Wickweed is a wild ashland grain that grows in the Grazelands. Corkbulb grows best in the Ascadian Isles. Most salt rice comes from southeastern Morrowind, but there are also some new and prospering farms and plantations in the Ascadian Isles. Salt rice occasionally grows wild in the Grazelands and on Azura's coast. To restore fatigue after heavy exertion, combine 2 or more of the following: crab meat, bread, small kwama egg, and chokeweed. Crab meat is taken from the mud crab, commonly found along all coasts. Bread in Morrowind is usually baked from salt rice flour. Kwama eggs are harvested from egg mines and sold everywhere in Morrowind. The The smaller eggs retain properties lost in later states of gestation. Chokeweed is a tough shrub growing in the rocky highlands of the West Gash. To cure common diseases, combine grave dust and green lichen. Grave dust is spirit-affinitive dust taken from remains buried in consecrated ground. Green lichen is a hardy primitive plant that grows in the Ascadian Isles and Azura's coast. To restore magicka for spellcasting, combine comberry and frost salts. Comberry is a bitter berry used to make wines. It grows mainly in the Ascadian Isles. Frost salts, by contrast, are rare and expensive. These crystalline compounds precipitate from elemental frost in solution. Such residues may be collected from the remains of frost atronachs that have been banished from the mortal plane. Travelers' recipes. Pilgrims and travelers will find the following inexpensive recipes of particular interest. Feather reduces the weary traveler's burdens and can be gained from heather and scuttle. Heather is a low evergreen shrub of the Ascadian Isles, known for its small pinkish-purple flowers. Scuttle, Vardenfell's favorite local dish, is similar to cheese and made from the flesh of local beetles. Levitation can be produced from any two of the following ingredients: trauma root, racer plumes, and coda flowers. A thick, bitter-tasting root of the trauma shrub grows in the Ashlands, Mullaghmere, and Red Mountain regions. Racer plumes are plucked from dead cliff racers. Coda flowers are collected from the primitive draggletail plant of the Bitter Coast. The power of water breathing is handy for travelers. A potion may be made from 2 or more of the following ingredients: luminous russula, hackalow leaf, and quamacuddle. Luminous russula is a squat, mottled brown and green toadstool mushroom of the Bitter Coast region. Hackalow leaf is a succulent leaf of the Grazelands, prized for its taste and its roborative powers. Quamacuddle is a tough, waxy substance that comes from sacs in the mouths of Quama. Adventurers' recipes. Unfortunately, the potions most favored by adventurers require the most rare and expensive ingredients. There are exceptions, like the easy and affordable recipe for Fire Shield, but most potions require at least one ingredient with high cost in coin or blood. Fire Shield potions can be made from comberry and sload soap. Comberry is the bitter berry of the Ascadian Isles. Sload soap is a waxy substance made from the immature, non-sentient forms of the sload. Sload soap is not expensive, but is only rarely stocked by apothecaries or alchemists, and cannot be collected locally. An adventurer can fortify his strength with a potion made from ash yams and dregwax. Ash yam is a tough tuberous root vegetable common to the Ascadian Isles region. Dregwax is a tough, waxy substance scraped from dreg shells. Dreg are powerful aquatic creatures, and hunting them for their hides and wax is a dangerous occupation. Invisibility, one of the most prized effects of potions, can only be made from crushed diamonds and bittergreen petals. Bittergreen is a red flowering plant growing in the Red Mountain region. Diamonds, on the other hand, are very rare and expensive, and usually must be purchased from fine alchemists. This book is a decent introduction to common potions to be made in the region, however, there are a couple mistakes. For example, the anonymous author states that smaller quama eggs retain more magical properties, positing that they are lost in later stages of gestation, implying the large quama eggs would have less alchemical potential. However, this is actually backwards, as we've discussed. The larger eggs do take more time to grow, but in fact, this allows them to soak up more nutrients. Perhaps this book was written before that was common knowledge. We all start somewhere. There's one more glaring error in the book. It states that bittergreen is a flowering plant with red petals, growing in the Red Mountain region. Either they are colorblind or the blight storms filled them with confusion. These plants are indeed a mixture of purple and yellow, not red as this book reports. No, I've not been tested for colorblindness. Why do you ask? The Cake and the Diamond by Ethan Muindle. I was in the Rat in the Pot, a foreigner corner club in Aldrun, talking to my fellow rats when I first saw the woman. Now, Breton women are fairly common in the Rat in the Pot. As a breed, they seem inclined to wander far from their perches in High Rock. Old Breton women, however, are not so migratory, and the wizened old biddy drew attention to herself, wandering about the room talking to everyone. Nimloth and Odiad were at their usual places, drinking their usual stuff. Odiad was showing off a prize he had picked up in some illicit manner. A colossal diamond, large as a baby's hand, and clear as spring water. I was admiring it when I heard the creaking of old bones behind me. "Good day to you, friends," said the old woman. "My name is Abel Cridit, and I am in need of financial assistance to facilitate my transportation to Aldredania." "You'll want to see the temple for charity," said Nimloth curtly. "I am not looking for charity," said Abel. "I'm looking to barter services." "Don't make me sick, old woman," laughed Odiad. "Did you say your name was Abel Cridit?" I asked. "Are you related to Abel Cridit, the High Rock alchemist?" "Closely related," she said, with a cackle. "We're the same person. Perhaps I could prepare you a potion in exchange for gold? I notice that you have in your possession a very fine diamond. The magical qualities of diamonds are boundless. Sorry, old woman. I ain't giving it up for magic. It was trouble enough stealing this one, said Odiad. I've got a fence who will trade it for gold. But your fence will demand a certain percentage, will he not? What if I could give you a potion of invisibility in exchange? In return for the diamond, you could have the means to steal many more. A very fair exchange of services, I would say. It would be, but I have no gold to give you, said Odiad. I'll take what remains of the diamond after I've made the potion, said Abel. If you took it to the Mages Guild, you'd have to supply all the other ingredients and pay for it as well. But I learned my craft in the wild, where no potion makers existed to dissolve diamonds into dust. When you must do it all by hand, by simple skill, you are blessed with remnants those fool potion makers at the guild simply swallow up. That sounds all very nice, said Nimloth, but how do we know your potion's going to work? If you make one potion, take the rest of Odiad's diamond, and leave, we won't know until you've gone whether the potion works or not. Ah, trust is so rare these days, sighed Abel. I suppose I could make 2 potions for you, and there'd still be a little left of the diamond for me. Not a lot, but perhaps enough to get me to Ald Redania. Then you could try the first potion right here and now, and see if you're satisfied or not. But, I interjected, you could make one potion that works and one that doesn't, and take more of the diamond. She could even give you a slow-acting poison, and by the time she got to Ald Redania, you'd be dead. Bleedin' Kinnerith, you Dunmer are suspicious. I'll hardly have any diamond left, but I could make 2 potions of 2 doses each, so you can satisfy yourself that the potion works and has no negative effects. If you still don't trust me, come along with me to my table and witness my craft if you'd like. So it was decided that I would accompany Abel back to her table where she had all her traveling bags full of herbs and minerals, to make certain she was not making 2 different potions. It took nearly an hour of preparation, but she kindly allowed me to finish her half-filled flagon of wine while I watched her work. Splintering the diamond and powdering the pieces required the bulk of the time. Over and over again she waved her gnarled hands over the gem, intoning ancient enchantments, breaking the facets of the stone into smaller and smaller pieces. Separately, she made pastes of minced bittergreen, crushed red bulbs of Delarco Spey, and driblets of Siciliani oil. I finished the wine. Old woman, I finally said with a sigh, how much longer is this going to take? I'm getting tired of watching you work. The Mages Guild has fooled the populace into thinking alchemy is a science, she said, but if you're tired, rest your eyes. My eyes closed, seemingly of their own volition, but there had been something in that wine, something that made me do what she asked. I think I'll make up the potion as cakes. It's much more potent that way. Now, tell me, young man, what will your friends do once I give them the potion? Mug you in the street afterwards to retrieve the rest of the diamond, I said simply. I didn't want to tell the truth, but there it was. I thought so, but I wanted to be certain. You may open your eyes now. I opened my eyes. Abel had made a small presentation on a wooden platter, 2 small cakes and a silver cutting knife. Pick up the cakes and bring them to the table, said Abel. And don't say anything except to agree with whatever I say. I did as I was told. It was a curious sensation. I didn't really mind being her puppet. Of course, in retrospect, I resent it, but it seemed perfectly natural at the time to obey without question. Abel handed the cakes to Odiad, and I dutifully verified that both cakes were made the same way. She suggested that he cut one of the cakes in half, and she would take one piece and he'd take the other, just so he would know that they worked and weren't poisoned. Odiad thought it was a good idea and used Abel's knife to cut the cake. Abel took the piece on the left and popped it into her mouth. Odiad took the piece on the right and swallowed it more cautiously. Abel and all the bags she was carrying vanished from sight almost instantly. Nothing happened to Odiad. Why did it work for the witch and not for me? Cried Odiad. Because the diamond dust was only on the left-hand side of the blade, said the old alchemist through me. I felt her control lessening as the distance grew, and she hurried invisibly down the dark Aldrin street away from the rat in the pot. We never found Abel Cridit or the diamond. Whether she completed her pilgrimage to Ald Redania is anyone's guess. The cakes had no effect except to give Odiad a bad case of droops that lasted for nearly a week. In this story, Aethan Muindle recounts the events of a visit from Abel Cridit. Yes, indeed, the same Abel Cridit we visited in Valenvarian. Using her methods of alchemy, she slyly tricked the thieves into allowing her unburdened passage on her journey. The disease called droops that she placed upon Odiad is in fact a real condition one can acquire from different Quama creatures that carry it. Overall, this is a great story, and one that shows the boons of proper alchemical knowledge. As they still have an eye out for old Abel, this alchemist humbly requests that you keep our friend's location a secret. This book, written by Hardin the Herbalist, gives a brief overview of a few, seemingly randomly selected, reagents to be found throughout the realm. Of note to us is only the fire fern, for which Hardin has this to say. Fire fern, a perennial herb, is native to the province of Morrowind. The flowers are inconspicuous and often hidden. The glossy, evergreen foliage and blossoms are resistant to conditions of high heat and bright light. A petal from this plant placed under the adventurer's tongue will provide protection from heat and fire of the lava pits and thermal streams around Dagoth-Ur. A Game at Dinner by an Anonymous Spy. Forward from the publisher. The history behind this letter is almost as interesting and dark as the story it tells. The original letter to the mysterious Donane was copied and began circulating around the ashlands of Vardenfell a few months ago. In time, a print found its way to the mainland and Prince Lalu Helseth's palace outside Almalexia. While the reader may conclude after reading this letter that the prince would be furious about such a work, impugning his highness with great malevolence, quite the reverse was true. The prince and his mother, Queen Baranzaya, had it privately printed into bound copies and sent to libraries and booksellers throughout Morrowind. As matter of the record, the prince and the queen have not officially stated whether the letter is a work of pure imagination or based on an actual occurrence. The House Dress has publicly denounced the work, and indeed, no one named Donane, despite the suggestions in the letter, has ever been linked to the house. We leave the reader to interpret the letter as he or she believes. Nearest Gone, Publisher. Dark Liege Donane. You asked for a detailed description of my experience last night and the reasons for my plea to House Dress for another assignment. I hope I have served you well in my capacity as informant in the court of Prince Helseth, a man who I have stated in many previous reports could teach Molike Ball how to scheme. As you know, I've spent nearly a year now working my way into his inner circle of advisors. He was in need of friendship when he first arrived in Morrowind, and eagerly took to me and a few others. Still, he was disinclined to trust any of us, which is perhaps not surprising, given his tenuous position in Morrowind society. For your unholiness's recollection, the prince is the eldest son of Baranzaya, who was once the queen of Morrowind, and once the queen of the High Rock Kingdom of Wayrest. At the death of her husband, Prince Helseth's stepfather, King Eadwyr, there is a power struggle between the prince and Eadwyr's daughter, the Princess Elisana. Though details of what transpired are imperfect, it is clear that Elisana won the battle and became queen, banishing Helseth and Baranzaya. Baranzaya's only other child, Morgaya, had already left court to marry and become queen of the Somerset Isle kingdom of Firsthold. Baranzaya and Helseth crossed the continent to return to Morrowind only last year. They were well received by Baranzaya's uncle, our current king, Lalu Athan Lethan, who had taken the throne after Baranzaya's abdication more than 40 years ago. Baranzaya made it clear that she had no designs on reclaiming the throne, but merely to retire to her family estates. Helseth, as you know, has lingered in the royal court, and many have whispered that while he lost the throne of Wayrest, he does not intend to lose the throne of Morrowind at Lethan's death. I've kept your unholiness informed about the prince's movements, meetings, and plots, as well as the names and characters of his other advisors. As you may recall, I've often thought that I was not the only spy in Helseth's court. I told you before that a particular Dunmer councillor of Helseth looked like a fellow I had seen in the company of Tholar Sarioni, the archcanon of the Tribunal Temple. Another, a young Nord woman, has been verified to visit the Imperial Fortress in Balmora. Of course, in their cases, they might well have been on Helseth's own business, but I couldn't be certain. I had begun to think myself paranoid as the prince himself, when I found myself doubting the sincere loyalty of the prince's chamberlain, Burgess, a Breton who had been in his employ since his days in the court of Wayrest. That is the background on the night last night. Yesterday morning I received a curt invitation to dine with the prince. Based only on my own paranoia, I dispatched one of my servants, who is a good and loyal servant of House Dress, to watch the palace and report back anything unusual. Just before dinner, he returned and told me what he had witnessed. A man cloaked in rags had been given entrance to the palace, and had stayed there for some time. When he left, my servant saw his face beneath the cloak. An alchemist of infamous repute, said to be a leading supplier of exotic poisons. A fine observer, my servant also noticed that the alchemist entered the palace, smelling of wickweed, bittergreen, and something alien and sweet. When he left, he was odorless. He had come to the same conclusion I did. The prince had procured ingredients to prepare a poison. Bittergreen alone is deadly when eaten raw, but the other ingredients suggested something far deeper. As your Unholiness can doubtless imagine, I went to dinner that night prepared for any eventuality. All of Prince Helseth's other counselors were in attendance, and I noticed that all were slightly apprehensive. Of course, I imagined that I was in a nest of spies, and all knew of the prince's mysterious meeting. It is just as likely that some knew of the alchemist's visit, while others were simply concerned by the nature of the prince's invitation. And still others merely unconsciously adopted the tense disposition of their fellow, better-informed counselors. The prince, however, was in fine mettle, and soon had everyone relaxed and at ease. At 9, we were all ushered into his dining hall where the feast had been laid out. And what a feast! Honeyed gore apples, fragrant stews, roasts in various blood sauces, and every variety of fish and fowl expertly and ostentatiously prepared. Crystal and gold flagons of wine, Flynn, Sheen, and Mazte were at our seats to be savored as appropriate with each course. As tantalizing as the aromas were, it occurred to me that in such a maze of spices and flavors, a discreet poison would be undetectable. Throughout the meal, I maintained the illusion of eating the food and drinking the liquor, but I was surreptitious and swallowed nothing. Finally, the plates and food were cleared from the table, and a tureen of spicy broth was placed in the center of the banquet. The servant who brought it then retired, closing the banquet hall door behind him. "It smells divine, my prince," said the Marquioness Kolgar, the Nord woman, "but I cannot eat another thing." "Your Highness," I added, feigning a tone of friendliness and slight intoxication, "you know that everyone at this table would gladly die to put you on the throne of Morrowind, but is it really necessary that we gorge ourselves to death?" The others at the table agreed with appreciative groans. Prince Helseth smiled. "I swear by Vermina the Gifter, my dark liege, even you have never seen a smile such as this one." Ironic words. You see, an alchemist visited me today, as some of you already doubtless know. He showed me how to make a marvelous poison and its antidote. A most potent potion, excellent for my purposes. No restoration spell will aid you once you've digested it. Only the antidote in the tureen will save you from certain death, and what a death from what I've heard. I'm eager to see if the effects are all that the alchemist promised. It should be horribly painful for the afflicted, but quite entertaining. No one said a word. I could feel my heart beating hard in my chest. "Your Highness," said Alarat, the Dunmer I suspected of alliance with the temple, "have you poisoned someone at this table?" "You are very astute, Alarat," said Prince Helseth, looking about the table, eyeing each of his advisors carefully. "Little wonder I value your counsel, as indeed I value all in this room. It would be perhaps easiest for me to say who I haven't poisoned. I haven't poisoned any who serve but one master, any whose loyalty to me is sincere. I haven't poisoned any person who wants to see King Helseth on the throne of Morrowind. I haven't poisoned anyone who isn't a spy for the Empire, the Temple, the House of Telvanni, the House of Redoran, the House of Indoril, the House of Dress. Your Unholiness," he looked directly at me at his last words. "I know that in certainty. My face is practiced at keeping my thoughts from showing, but I immediately thought of every secret meeting I've had, every coded message I sent to you in the house, my dark liege. What could he know? What could he, even without knowing, suspect?" I felt my heart beating even faster. Was it fear or poison? I couldn't speak, certain as I was that my voice would betray my calm facade. Those loyal to me who wish harm on my enemies may be wondering how I can be certain that the poison has been ingested. Is it possible that the guilty party, or dare I say parties, were suspicious and merely pretended to eat and drink tonight? Of course, but even the craftiest of pretenders would have to raise a glass to his or her lips and put empty forks or spoons in their mouths to play the charade. The food, you see, was not poisoned. The cups and cutlery were. If you did not partake out of fear, you're poisoned just the same, and sadly, missed an excellent roast. Sweat beaded on my face, and I turned from the prince so he could not see. My fellow advisors, all of them, were frozen in their seats. From the Marquioness Kolgar, white with fear, to Kima and Neb, visibly shaking. From the furrowed, angry brow of Alarat to the statue-like stare of Burgess. I couldn't help thinking then, could the prince's entire counselorship be comprised of nothing but spies? Was there any person at the table loyal? And then I thought, what if I were not a spy myself? Would I trust Helseth to know that? No one knows better than his advisors both the depth of the prince's paranoia and the utter implacability of his ambition. If I were not a spy for the House Dress, even then would I be safe? Could a loyalist be poisoned because of a not-so-innocent misjudgment? The others must have been thinking the same. Loyalists and spies alike. While my mind whirled, I could hear the prince's voice, addressing all assembled. The poison acts quickly. If the antidote is not taken within 1 minute from now, there will be a death at the table. I couldn't decide whether I had been poisoned or not. My stomach ached, but I reminded myself it might have been the result of sitting at a sumptuous banquet and not partaking. My heart shook in my chest, and a bitter taste like trauma root stung my lips. Again, was it fear or poison? "These are the last words you will hear if you are disloyal to me," said Prince Helseth, still smiling that damn smile as he watched his advisors squirming in their seats. "Take the antidote and live." Could I believe him? I thought of what I knew of the prince and his character. Would he kill a self-confessed spy at his court, or would he rather send the vanquished back to his masters? The prince was ruthless, but either possibility was within his manner. Surely the theatricality of this whole dinner was meant to be a presentation to instill fear. What would my ancestors say if I joined them after sitting at a table, eventually dying of poison? What would they say if I took the antidote, confessing my allegiance to you in the House Dress, and was summarily executed? And I confess I thought of what you might do to me even after I was dead. I had grown so lightheaded and filled with my own thoughts that I didn't see Burgess jump from his seat. I was only suddenly aware that he had the tureen in his hands and was gulping down the liquid within. There were guards all around, though I never noticed them entering. "Burgess," said Prince Helseth, still smiling, "you have spent some time at Ghostgate." "House Redoran?" "You didn't know?" Burgess laughed sourly. "No, House. I report to your stepsister, the Queen of Wayrest. I've always been in her employ. By Akatosh, you poisoned me because you thought I was working for some damnable dark elves?" "You're half right," said the prince. "I didn't guess who you were working for, or even that you were a spy. But you're also wrong about me poisoning you. You poisoned yourself when you drank from the tureen. Your Unholiness, you don't need to hear how Burgess died. I know that you have seen much over the many, many years of your existence, but you truly don't want to know. I wish I could erase the memory of his agonies from my own mind." The council was dismissed shortly after. I do not know if Prince Helseth knows or suspects that I too am a spy. I do not know how many others that night, last night, were as close as I was from drinking from the tureen before Burgess did. I only know that if the prince does not suspect me now, he will. I cannot win at the games he mastered long ago at the court of Wayrest, and I beg your Unholiness, my dark liege Danain, to use your influence in the House Dress and dismiss your loyal servant from this charge. Publisher's note. Of course, the anonymous writer's signature has not been on any reprint of the letter since the original. This story was very interesting concerning a dinner with Lalu Helseth and his advisors. Some say it is fact, while others call fiction. Interesting still is the fact that Helseth and his mother had the story published broadly throughout Tamriel, perhaps to scare away any would-be assassins or betrayers. Now we should go over a few inconsistencies. Although listed, there is no Imperial fortress in Balmora. Does this reference the House Lalu's headquarters? There is no certainty. More importantly, the ingredients for the poison are suspect. Bitter green is not deadly when eaten raw. In fact, you will only experience a brief feeling of enhanced intelligence. Its only real negative effect is a draining of endurance and magicka, nothing that will kill the imbiber. Wickwheat, however, could damage intelligence and paralyze, perhaps as a possible means of temporarily incapacitating a spy. There was also one ingredient left in the mixture that was not revealed. Still, none other than the previously mentioned negative effects could have come to fruition, and none of those are known to cause death. As this is the case, I suggest that the story is only just. Propaganda for propaganda's sake. The Song of the Alchemists, Ancient Tales of the Dwemer, Part 5, by Mirabar Sol. When King Moranian's alchemist had to leave his station after a laboratory experiment that yielded detonation, the word went out that the king did want a new savant to mix his potions and brews. But he declared he would only choose a fellow who knew the tricks and the tools. The king refused to hire on more fools. After much deliberation, discussions, and debates, the candidate picked two well-earned candidates, Eanthipus Minthurk and Umphatic Fair, an ambitious pair, vied to prove which one was the best. Said the king, there will be a test. They went to a large chamber with herbs, gems, tomes, pots, measuring cups, all under high crystalline domes. "Make me a tonic that will make me invisible," laughed the king in a tone some would call risible. So Umphatic Fair and Eanthipus Minthurk began to work, mincing herbs, mashing metal, refining strange oils, cautiously setting their cauldrons to burbling boils. Each on his own, sending mixing bowls mixing, sometimes peeking to see what the other was fixing. After they had worked for nearly 3/4 an hour, both Eanthipus Minthurk and Umphatic Fair winked at the other, certain he won. Said King Moranian, "Now you must taste the potions you've wrought. Take a spoon and sample it right from your pot." Minthurk vanished as his lips touched his brew, but Fair tasted his and remained apparent in view. "You think you mixed silver, blue diamonds, and yellow grass," the king laughed. "Look up, Fair, up to the ceiling glass. The light falling makes the ingredients you chose quite different hues. What do you get?" asked the floating voice, bold, of a potion of red diamonds, blue grass, and gold. "By Dwemer God," said Fair, his face in a wince, "I've made a potion to fortify my own intelligence." Publisher's note. This poetry is so clearly in the style of Gorfalim that it really does not need any commentary. Note the simple rhyming scheme of AA, BB, CC, the sing-song but purposefully clumsy meter, and the recurring jokes at the obviously absurd names, Umphatic Fair and Eanthipus Minthurk. The final joke that the stupid alchemist invents a potion to make himself smarter by pure accident would have appealed to the anti-intellectualism of audiences in the interregnum period, but would certainly be rejected by the Dwemer. Note that even Mirabar's Sol refuses to name any Dwemer gods. The Dwemer religion, if it can even be called that, is one of the most complex and difficult puzzles of their culture. Over the millennia, the song became a popular tavern song in High Rock before eventually disappearing from everything but scholarly books, much like the Dwemer themselves. This story, written by Marabar Soul, is the fifth part of an unfinished fiction series surrounding the ancient Dwemer. Although fictitious, it's still an interesting read and ends with a funny twist, the lesser alchemist having made a potion to increase his own mental acumen. By reading and internalizing some of these stories, we can come to know more about the popular views of alchemy, as well as the limits of the craft. Finally, since you have come this far in your studies, I feel you deserve the arcane knowledge of the best alchemists in all the land. But take heed. Once you know this information, you cannot come back from it. And often it can become drug-like, sapping your interest in any and all activity save the intoxication of liquid intellect. You have been warned. It is, in fact, possible to break and expand one's talent beyond the typical limits of alchemical study. This can be done by creating potions of intelligence fortification, then drinking them one at a time in order to compound the effects. Then, potions made in this state will become astronomically powerful. Watch closely, as I will only do this once, purely for educational purposes. As you can see, with only a few repetitions of this dangerous process, I can now use telekinesis in great magnitude. There are more nefarious uses of this practice, and I warn against it entirely. Again, you have been warned. After some time in my home province of Morrowind, I feel fully invigorated, though this may be due to the potion I ingested just before we began our adventure. The flora of Vardenfell has come to be more familiar to me than that which grows just outside my window, and as I take these notes, I realize what a grand task this treatise is coming to be. Here it was that my fascination with alchemy began, and perhaps my interest in the natural world as a whole. But it did not end there. Next, we shall journey 6 years in the future, landing in the dangerous but historically valuable year of the Oblivion Crisis. To the west of Morrowind's mainland sits the throne province of the Empire known as Cyrodiil. A hub for interprovincial commerce, this imperial landmass is home to many reagents both native and imported. The alchemical trade is something well employed in the region, most notably by members of the Mages Guild. They offer wholesale potions and ingredients, some of which have very elusive sources, similar to things like Daedraskin and Bloat in Vardenfell. Though the skill of alchemy here is not only for traders and mystics, the layman, with the proper apparatus, can dive headfirst into a world of effects. With each milestone of their journey, they will learn more refined methods of creation. These include the reflexive understanding of a reagent's qualities based on sight alone, as well as the eventual ability to make potions from a single ingredient. They can also coat weapons in poison, making them useful at last. However, all alchemists start somewhere. Before gaining a better understanding of an ingredient's potential, a novice can only extract one effect from each. The apparatus for potion making in Cyrodiil is quite the same as in Vardenfell, although Cyrodiilic styles incorporate more clear glass, potentially burned from the sands of elsewhere. Through this transparent glass, an alchemist can visibly see the reactions taking place between their reagents and the solvent, allowing for an even deeper understanding of the practice than was before possible. As the apparatus comes in pieces, it is similarly easy to make potions on the go. Finally, potions and poisons are often placed in a pink or green bottle respectively, whereas the designated bottle for each mixture in Vardenfell was usually up to the artistic whim of the brewer. There are over 140 ingredients to be found in Cyrodiil, so we had better get foraging. The region of Blackwood exists in the southernmost reaches of Cyrodiil. It is mostly marsh and swampland, containing dark trees which grow thick canopies due to the abundance of moisture in the region. So too do the fungal species enjoy the conditions. To the east, the region is bordered by the swamps of Black Marsh. Here, the vegetative species and insectoid inhabitants merge, creating an interesting mix. Make sure to bring potions of poison resistance to ward off any errant reptile bites as well. To the west, the region borders on the jungle-like regions of Elsewhere. Finally, to the south, the region opens up to the Topal Bay, through which visitors to the region enter and follow the Niben toward the Imperial City at the center of the province. Asco is short for ascomycete, from the phylum Ascomycota of fungi, in which the fruiting body is divided into compartments and has its spores held in a sac. Another example of this is the lichen we discussed in Vardenfell, or even cordyceps, an incredibly interesting type of fungi that infects arthropods. As for this particular fungi, the bog beacon is a light in the dark shadows of Blackwood. It offers restoration of magicka, as well as damage shielding if used in potion mixtures. Interestingly, one of the most abundant locations of growth for this fungus is quite near Onyx Caverns, the place where I rest between our visits. These mushrooms, most likely named after the Chlorosiboria aeruginescens, grow most commonly in the Blackwood region of Cyrodiil. They and their relative species are commonly confused as they look very similar. Outside of Nirn, they most often eat wood. The green stain name comes from the unique way in which the fungi's mycelium will turn the wood green as it eats its way through, which is absolutely fascinating. In Cyrodiil, these caps are far larger than their counterparts and produce potions of fatigue restoration and damage reflection, as well as common poisons. The relative of the cup cap, the shelf cap, grows primarily on trees and sometimes even rocks, while its cousin grows from the ground. Although they are near indistinguishable, their effects are quite different, which is a very common thing to remember when foraging for mushrooms. In this case, the fungi produce potions of luck and health restoration, as well as luck fortification. If one is foraging for this fungal body, it is incredibly important that they note whether or not they are attached to a rock or a form of wood. The petals of the Domica redwort can be used for a variety of positive effects, including frost resistance, poison cure, and invisibility. It's strange that they have evolved to resist cold temperatures, as they primarily grow in the southern, warmer regions. Perhaps this region was much colder in the past, then the snow and ice retreated to the north. The poison cure makes more sense, as this plant is often found in Blackwood as well, a location full of poisonous animals. The fronds or leaves of the Somnolius fern can be found commonly in multiple regions of Cyrodiil, and can be used to restore speed, fortify health, and reduce encumbrance by way of feather, allowing one to move quicker and carry more. For those who don't know, ferns also reproduce by spore, much like fungi. The Cyrodiilic stinkhorn, most likely Clathrus archery, is named for its off-putting smell. Although the scent will linger on the hands, it is well worth it to secure a stock of these mushrooms. They produce potions of magic restoration, water walking, and invisibility. All of these very useful for a variety of excursions. As a final strange plant to be found in the Blackwood region, we have the pitcher plant. It lures insects to its apex with sweet nectar, then consumes them once they fall into the pitcher, as it were. This is because the plants have difficulty obtaining nitrogen naturally in their swampy environments, hence they get it from their prey. All of that said, this plant does not offer any alchemical value, at least that I know of. Studies into its properties should be conducted at the earliest opportunity. The Colovian Highlands are a very hilly region on the western edge of Cyrodiil. Most of this area is comprised of occasional trees, fields of grasses, and a mix of boulders which have shifted place with time. It's mostly wild, unpopulated due to difficulties of terrain. Although the area is not at all overburdened by alchemical quarries, there still exists some to be found, especially along the border of neighboring Hammerfell. The yellow umbels of the Phoeniculum vulgare are known to grow most commonly on shorelines, but within Cyrodiil, it also grows inland of the Gold Coast and Colovian Highlands. The seeds of these plants can be harvested to produce potions of fatigue restoration. Outside of Nirn, they are also eaten as vegetables or used to make teas. However, these Cyrodiilic counterparts can also be used to make a devastating poison of intelligence and magicka damage, as well as complete paralysis. The Lady's Mantle plant almost looks as if the yellow flowers are wearing a dress of green leaves. These leaves of the Alchemy Amalis can be used to produce potions of health restoration, night eye, and feather. Drawing back to our initial discussion of alchemical history, the olden researchers considered the dew collected from these leaves to be the purest form of water possible. They used this dew as a solvent when attempting to convert metal into gold, and so we get the genus of Alchemia. A mandrake is simply the root of a plant, however it is more commonly recognized as a root of the Mandragora genus. Some mandrakes of this genus grow to form humanoid shapes, and have often been connected with religious ritual and human history. Adding to this is the fact that they contain hallucinogenic alkaloids, meaning that their consumption could potentially lead one to meet their maker, in a sense at least. In Cyrodiil, the mandrakes seem to come from a different plant, as they not only cure one's diseases and prevent poisons, which contain the active alkaloids, but also fortify one's willpower. Although not as experiential, these plants are still very much worth the harvest, and if one is lacking their apparatus, they can simply eat the root in order to instantly cure common diseases. Coming from the Solidago genus, the goldenrod produces seed pods with beneficial properties. These include strength restoration, light production, and water breathing. Along with garlic, this is a great ingredient for deep water divers. As with many regions throughout the world, Cyrodiil has a number of cave systems. These provide a cool, damp home to many types of creatures, but also fungi. The most prominent of these are the following two species. The cairn bolete is named for the Boletus family of which it is a part, as well as the rock clusters near which it grows. This mushroom restores health while also preventing paralysis, meaning that eating this one fungal body could protect you if you eat others, preventing conditions such as the wood lover's paralysis, in which the consumption of some wood-consuming species can leave one temporarily paralyzed or in such a lazy state that they cannot move. The last fungal species known to grow readily in Cyrodiil's caves are the wisp stalks.
Hist sap.
These only grow in caverns, and their spindly appearance is fascinating. The incredibly long stipes raise the caps to about knee height, increasing the spread of their spores immensely. Although they can be used to make potions of speed fortification, this effect must be carefully threaded amongst the others. Those include health, willpower, and intelligence poisons. The Gold Coast is a small region in the southwest of Cyrodiil, containing only one major city named Anvil. The city is prosperous, being one of only 2 ports to the province, and the only comfortable means of entry from the Abetian Sea. This region is quite fertile, with fairly common rains as well as ample sun. As such, there grow many plants in the region that are very useful in alchemical pursuits. Aloe barbadensis are used to soothe burns and stimulate healing, connecting well to the health restoration effect, though it is interesting that it doesn't also resist fire damage. Still, these plants are a joy to come across after long journeys, both for the healing property and visual beauty. The arrowroot is much akin to yams or other tubers, and can fortify one's strength, allowing them to hit harder in battle and also enhance their carry weight. This is great for traders and their beasts of burden alike. Silybum marianum grows in meadows and regularly disturbed locations, such as paths kicked around by the boots of travelers. They're toxic to livestock due to high nitrate concentration, and although used as a medicinal plant in some regions, there's little to no evidence that the milk thistle aids in any significant way. In Cyrodiil, the seeds are of primary interest. They can be used as both poisons and potions. They can cure paralysis while producing a font of mystical light, a very interesting effect. However, they can also ironically paralyze someone, as well as deal frost damage to them if poisoned. Regardless of the beauty of any species, in this case a common invasive, the alchemist is better prepared to have done much research into each combination. A fairly common farm plant, the wheat grain is used primarily in food production. It does offer health fortification when mixed into potions though, and should be procured if possible. The Great Forest is a densely wooded area surrounding the heartland on all sides but the east. It contains vibrant trees and grasses, along with lots of fungal species and roaming animal life. This cozy atmosphere is an alchemist's paradise. However, one should make sure to be aware of their surroundings, as wolves are known to hunt deer in many parts of the region. Cerioporus squamosus is a shelf fungi that grows on deciduous trees. It's not a choice edible species, but is known to restore one's luck if they have walked under a few too many ladders. If one is experiencing relatively good fortune, they should best leave the mushrooms for use in the environment. The elf cup, or Sarcosypha austriaca, is a uniquely shaped fruiting body that forms a cup of sorts. In European folklore, it is said that elves drink their water from rain collected in these caps. They favor areas of continuous rainfall and thus enjoy locations such as Ireland and Britain outside of Nirn, often found in forests upon decaying twigs and branches. Found in the northern reaches of the Great Forest in an area of no particular raininess, these cups stand out clearly. Also known as Amanita muscaria, this mushroom is beautiful with a red cap and raised white pockmarks across it. In popular media, this is seen as a cutesy mushroom, but it has an interesting range of effects. Growing in forests of both deciduous and coniferous trees, these fungi offer both agility and health restoration, as well as a mixture of burden and shock damage poisons. Outside of Nirn, these mushrooms also contain alkaloids, meaning that the journey does not end when you find them, but rather begins when you eat them. Finally, their name, the fly amanita, refers to their contents of ibotenic acid, which can attract and kill flies as well as similar insects. Also known as the cuckoo flower for its synchronized bloom with the bird's arrival in spring, the cardamine pratensis is known to offer effects of health fortification and fire restoration if used in alchemical processes. Despite the name, it does not share an appearance with the lady's mantle. Levangula angustifolia is the base of one of the most commonly brewed teas ever discovered. It has a soothing and refreshing taste known to aid in sleep. The Cyrodiilic variety restores health and personality, as well as offering fortification of willpower. Aconitum variegatum is known for its uniquely shaped bluish flower petals, which some believe looks like a monk in religious garb. They can be used to make potions of endurance fortification and strength restoration. They are also a great combination with Minotaur horn for the less ordinant monk. A member of the same family which houses the regular blue Entoloma, the steel blue Entoloma can be used to do one of two things. Either one can make a potion of magicka restoration and frost resistance, good for northern travels, or they can create poisons of fire damage and burden, the latter of which seems especially effective should one be forced into a bad situation, leaving the opponent on fire and less capable of movement, giving them a great amount of time to consider their actions. Lilium lancifolium, the tiger lily, and Conviaria majalis, the lily of the valley, both produce the same nectar in Cyrodiil. Much like the external counterpart, the nectar does contain some amount of poison, specifically damage to strength and willpower. However, it is also useful for restoring endurance and allowing the imbiber to walk on water. A member of the nightshade family, the Solanum lycopersicum, are grown commonly across Cyrodiil. Apart from their basic use as a food crop, they can also be juiced in order to make potions of life detection and shielding. Brunera macrophylla can be used to make potions of paralysis cure and resistance, as well as Night-Eye, a somewhat rare effect in the region. These are very useful potions when traveling through the expanses of Blackwood, where poisonous amphibians and other creatures travel through dense dark woods. Perhaps the objectively tastiest plant in the Cucurbitaceae family, the watermelon grows in a few select farms of Cyrodiil. Other than the magical conjuration of light, this fruit does not much serve the alchemists, other than as an afternoon delight. If you've never tried salting a watermelon, this alchemist humbly suggests you change that. In the center of Cyrodiil lie the Heartlands, the inner sanctum of the Empire. Here the Imperial City was built around the White Gold Tower. A few different districts stand across the central island, with some reaching out to the mainland across Lake Rumer. Although the interior is very much a metropolitan area with little animal life, it does still contain some hardy aquatic plants and plenty mushrooms which benefit from disturbed soil. Outside the walls, the coastlines of the inner island can be counted on to host mud crabs and nirnroot, among other things. This is perhaps the safest region of the land, and if a mud crab pinches your toes, you'll be very near to assistance. Ipomea purpurea is a species of gorgeous climbing flowers which scale all sorts of structures. Some species within the family are epiphytic, meaning they grow atop other plants without being parasitic or stealing energy from them. The seeds of these plants produce ergin, which is known to upset the stomach and should be kept away from pets and children. The root pulp of this plant is similarly dangerous, a congealed substance which contains many negative effects, such as magicka and willpower damage, as well as burdening. This causes for a sickly poison and should be avoided when foraging. A rather strange species, the nirnroot has a bright green color, and, somehow, creates a magical hum when one nears it. These plants do not yet seem to have any positive effects, though some are in the process of uncovering their potential. We will discuss the primary scholar later. For now, they are better left alone by amateur alchemists, as they drain many abilities as well as one's own health. Primula vulgaris is a common flowering plant in Cyrodiil, existing in many regions. There are two varieties with pink or purple petals. They can be used to restore personality and fortify luck, suggesting a potential use as a cologne or aromatic concoction. Iacornia crassipes enjoys growing and invading in nearly any body of water. Although beautiful, these are an incredible danger to other vegetation in the environment. Drawing on this, they reduce the luck and fatigue stores of the imbiber, but can also be used to create potions which restore and fortify magicka. It's a fine line between beautiful usefulness and dangerous practicality. On the northern end of Cyrodiil rise the Jarl Mountains. These form the border between this province and Skyrim. As such, the mountains are quite snowy, and few ingredients are able to survive comfortably. If one is crossing over into Skyrim through these mountains, it is advisable that they bring potions of frost resistance as well as general health and stamina, as there is but one major settlement in the region at which to resupply. Artemisia absinthium, in the same genus as mugwort, can be found sparsely in the cold region of the Jarl Mountains. They can be used to fortify fatigue and grant invisibility, but can also be poisonous to health and magicka. The Nibene Basin lies to the east of the Heartlands and covers a considerable amount of land, stretching up toward the Jarl Mountains and south toward Blackwood. As this region is a basin saturated by the waters of Lake Rumaire and Nibben Bay, one would imagine this location to be quite fruitful for alchemical pursuits. Instead, it is somewhat lacking, containing a few species which commonly abound, and only a random smattering of others here and there. One should keep an eye out for any and all plant samples, but harvest them with care for their lack of abundance. Blackberries are from the Rubus genus and are a commonly grown plant in Cyrodiil. Outside of Nirn, they are much the same, prized for their number and taste, but here they also offer magical qualities of fatigue and magicka restoration, as well as shock resistance and fortification of endurance. This is a very strong list of effects for such an unassuming berry. Pycnoporus cinnabarinus is a bracket fungi that grows on trees. It can produce potions of shielding for the consumer, though outside of Nirn, it produces acids to keep bacteria at bay, one of a few things rendering it inedible. While on a hike recently, a fellow scholar and I actually came across what I believe to be this very mushroom. At least it looks very similar and is known to grow in the area. Quite intriguing. This beautiful mushroom, Russula emetica, no joke, that's the scientific name, very easy to remember, is a common mushroom in damp forests near conifers within the northern hemisphere. In Cyrodiil, it pops up here and there around the forests of the West Weald and Nibene Basin. The name basically translates to Russula that will cause vomiting, as it can definitely do so. There are more than 100 red-capped Russula species known to exist, and it's best to avoid any of them should they turn your stomach sour. In Cyrodiil, it is much the same story, with their consumption damaging your endurance. Strangely, they also produce potions of shield, something of a pattern within these mushrooms, that have evolved peculiar methods of protection in a vegetative lifestyle. Panax ginseng has been said to improve focus and clarity, and is often brewed into bitter teas. However, these effects may be placebo, as few experts agree there is definitive evidence on the topic. In Cyrodiil at least, the root of the ginseng plant will cure poison and fortify one's magicka, connecting at least in some form to the idea of enhanced intellectual clarity. Lactuca sativa is a commonly grown plant that is versatile in its uses as food. In Cyrodiil, they restore luck while also applying a shield from flame damage. Raphanus sativus, the common radish, is a somewhat rare plant in Cyrodiil, farmed only in a few locations. If mixed carefully, they can make potions of chameleon, allowing one to sink into the shadows. Fragaria X ananassa is a commonly grown bush in Cyrodiilic farms. Along with their enjoyable taste and color, the pseudocarps of this plant can be used to make potions of fatigue restoration, poison cure, and damage reflection, a good repertoire for such a common fruit. Boletus reticulatus are most often recognized for their thick and squat appearance. They enjoy growing in forests, as well as in mildly damp locations such as the Nibene Basin. These can be used to restore one's agility while providing them with a damage shield. Grown rarely across the province, Nicotania tabacum is used for completely different purposes than its extra-Nirn counterpart. Here, it can restore fatigue, allow paralysis resistance, and dispel negative magical effects. These beneficial properties would imply a demand, but strangely, only a few farms have taken to growing them. Perhaps this is a new market opportunity. The smallest region of Cyrodiil, the Nibene Valley, covers the eastern and western flanks of Nibben Bay. The only settlement in this region is the town of Bravel, but it seems larger than it is due to its proportion of land taken up versus the total coverage of the valley. There are some plants that can be counted on to grow here, such as bergamot and nightshade, as well as some others lacking clear alchemical purpose like the cattail reed. This plant is otherwise called Monarda fistulosa, or the common bergamot. Outside of Nirn, it was used by indigenous peoples in healing teas, which connects to its use in Cyrodiil as a disease preventative. The pink leaves are an easy find amongst all the green. Although the thin leaves are somewhat similar to the Hemigraphis rotunda, it is unlikely at all related to the dragon's tongue we know. Instead, this boasts a bright yellow flower, calling to mind a flash of flame. It produces potions of healing, fire resistance, and fire shielding. It can also be poisonous if prepared incorrectly. Digitalis purpurea, most likely named for its purple leaves, is a toxic species that grows well in groves between wooded areas. It is known best as the source of digoxin, a heart medication. In Cyrodiil, none of its toxic properties are apparent, instead having a fully beneficial repertoire, including poison, paralysis, and disease resistance, as well as luck restoration. As it is so beneficial, finding this plant in the wild probably feels like all the luck one needs. Hypericum perforatum can be found in a few regions of Cyrodiil, but primarily in the Nibene Valley and Great Forest. Although unassuming, the nectar of this plant can be highly valuable to mixers. It can create potions of shock resistance, poison cure, and chameleon. Much like the green leaves of the plant on the backdrop of the forest, the drinker can mimic their environment while sneaking about. The Valus Mountains form the border between the imperial capital of Cyrodiil and the Dunmer homeland of Morrowind. It should be clear that this border is with the mainland of the region, not the island of Vardenfell that most think of when reflecting on the province. A steep and sheer set of rises, the Valus Mountains are more difficult to traverse than almost any other region in the province. Only a small handful of vegetative species are known to grow here as well, and their location can sometimes be difficult to seek out, not exactly in terms of visibility, but in means of traveling to the distant mushroom should you catch sight of it. Lepista nebularis is a mushroom found outside of Nirn, and looks quite similar to its Cyrodiilic counterpart. They're known to form in such a way as to look like a funnel of clouds or a tornado. Along with the carrot, only this reagent can produce fortify intelligence potions, though outside of Nirn it will upset many stomachs, as represented by its ability to damage one's endurance. Fomus fomentarius, the hoof fungus, is one of the oldest mushrooms known to be used by humanity. These were found in the pocket of a nomad in the Swiss Alps, a person who passed away in 3300 BCE. The amado, a material carved from the interior of the fungus, is a fantastic tinder for fires, hence the tinder polypore title. It can be used for many other purposes, but of chief importance to the Cyrodiilic forager are the effects of willpower restoration, disease resistance, and invisibility. Among the whites and greys of its cold environment, an adventurer would stick out like a sore thumb. The invisibility would be a big help in such a case, so that they are not attacked by a wild predator. The West Weald, confusingly located on the southern middle border of Cyrodiil, is known for its many farms and vineyards. Here, lots of common food crops can be found, but not only those. There's an alchemical bounty that grows all throughout the region, many beautiful flowers of different colors and effects, as well as mushrooms. While delighting in the forage, a traveler would be well advised to keep an eye out for the infamous bears of the region, known to be particularly difficult to face in combat. As long as one pays attention to their surroundings, they will make out with more than enough materials for experimentation. Pentaglottis sempervirens, native to southwestern Europe, is one of many real plants found in Cyrodiil. It grows in partly shaded areas such as woodlands and human-disturbed locations. The roots are sometimes used for red dye and fabrics. As far as alchemical effects go, the most interesting one is the production of light. Strangely, this plant not only grows through photosynthesis, but can also create light magically in the case that shade is too strong. How fascinating. One of only 2 ingredients that can create fortify intelligence potions, this carrot also enhances one's night vision, corroborating modern myths that their consumption will aid in ocular efficiency. They do, however, contain compounds such as beta-carotene that help in eye health, so there is some truth to the sayings. Although both varieties reduce one's personality, the yellow cap will fortify endurance and reflect spell damage, making it the more useful of the 2 cinnabars. These similarly grow off the tree trunks and are a bit scarcer than the red variety. Coming from the Aquilegia genus, these beautiful flowers number over 100 in specific epithets. Those in Cyrodiil seem to be Aquilegia canadensis or the red columbine. The word aquila comes from Latin and means eagle, suggesting the shape of the bird's claws can be seen in the petals. Apparently, a root produces pulp at the base of the flower that can be used for alchemical purposes. These include making potions of magica fortification, chameleon, or even personality restoration, the latter of which may be due to the generous fragrance of the flower. A common crop both in and out of Nirn, Dracana fragrans, or corn, is used to heal fatigue while also providing a shield against shock damage. How this is achieved is a mystery, but sometimes the best gifts come in the smallest packages. Linum eucydictissimum is a commonly grown plant that provides material for linen fabrics as well as efficient stores of protein within its seeds. They can produce potions of magic restoration, shielding, and feather, a rare effect that is prized among adventurers. If mixed in the wrong ingredients, it can also produce a poison of health damage, proving once again that alchemy is a delicate craft. Beyond their use as reagents, they are also simply gorgeous in the garden, boasting purple and pink varieties. Vitis vinifera, praised in Cyrodiil for its resultant flavors in wine, is a commonly grown vineyard crop. Most often near Skingrad, the berries of this plant can restore fatigue, dispel the negative effects of bad magics, and even allow one to temporarily walk on water, though this latter effect requires much expertise and practice to employ. Otherwise, grapes are grown in West Weald by both the Cyrodiil brothers and Tamika, both known for their various wines sold all across the province. Here we can see their winemaking apparatus, a very neat peek into the production of the sweet intoxicant. Allium ampeloprasum is a relative of garlic and onions and grows best in loose soil. Typically cooked as a vegetable, this plant can also be used as an alchemical ingredient to make potions of agility fortification. However, the smell of the cyrodiilic leek will damage one's personality for a short while after consumption. Leonurus cardiaca is named so for two reasons. One, the leaves are said to resemble the tails of lions. And two, these plants were used as an ancient remedy for health problems concerning the heart back when humanity was focused on the four humors. In Cyrodiil, this plant is used for poison resistance and invisibility, a potent and expensive combination. There does not seem to be any connection to its external heart healing rumors. This plant is part of the Solanaceae family, which also includes things like potatoes, tomatoes, and bell peppers. In this case, it seems to be a Tropa belladonna, a toxic plant that can be used as a potent poison. Not only does it directly harm one's health, but it also burdens them and damages their luck, preventing a chance survival. Paeonia officinalis grows commonly in the West Weald and can be used to restore one's strength. However, it is yet another possible ingredient in poison. The lands of Cyrodiil do seem to be treacherous for those with unstained fingers. Another member of the nightshade family, the potato is a very common and versatile tuber. Unlike belladonna, the potato has primarily positive effects, such as fatigue restoration and frost shielding. It also tastes great in almost any dish. Technically a fruit, the Cucurbita pepo grow in many different farms across the province. They seem to be able to grow year-round, so long as there are no lasting frosts in the southern regions. Like the onion, these fruits are able to create potions of light detection. The sacred lotus grows in pools of water, including the drainage ditches of the imperial city. Unfazed by the effects of runoff, these plants grow strong, producing potions of multiple positive effects. Frost resistance, dispel, and feather are all useful, especially in one tincture. Located in a strange realm given to Mankar Cameron by Mehrunes Dagon, this island is perpetually lit by sunset. Animals in Daedra abound, and so too do the architectural structures of the ancient Ayleids. Between these are the odd ingredient, and the island is the sole home of two specific plants. This ingredient comes from the reddish-purple flowers of the mana bloom, offering a means of health restoration. Ambrosia is known all throughout the realms as the food of the gods, edible plants that can bring immortality and taste better than anything else. The most common form of ambrosia is artemisifolia, named after the goddess of the hunt. Unfortunately, this plant is very annoying and many people are allergic to its pollen. Looking much like the reddish variant, the bluish variant of mana bloom provides liquor. Liquor means blood of the gods, and is used to restore one's magicka. This is a simple effect, but very useful in Cameron's Paradise, where ingredients and supplies are scarce. After moving through one of the Daedric Gates to Oblivion, one will find themselves in the Deadlands, the realm of Mehrunes Dagon. On these lava-trapped islands are many hostile creatures and humanoids, lots of different traps, and more dangers than one could count on their fingers. Not only are the Daedric beasts to be worried about, but also some of the vegetation. For example, the whipping Harada could knock you into next Tyrdas. When harvesting ingredients here, it is best to bring a friend, or many friends, and to limit your time exposed to the realm. These grasses probably suck blood through the xylem instead of water to grow, a twisted method of survival. There are plenty sacrifices to supply it. This additional blood gives them a health fortification effect. Quite the unique plant, the Harada will whip its tendrils toward the unlucky passerby. And if you happen to find one in its natural habitat, you must be quite unlucky indeed. If carefully harvested, it can be used to make poisons of health and magicka damage, as well as silence and paralysis. This poison is incredibly powerful and should be handled with great care. That is, if you can grab it before its thorn whips cut your hands. Much like the Harada, this dastardly plant of Oblivion has an active method of self-defense. If a potential predator comes near, it will spew a poison which reduces their speed, making them easy targets for the creatures that roam close by. If harvested, the spittle stick can be used to make devastating poisons of health, magicka, and fire damage. This is one of the best poison ingredients known to the realms, but one should be very careful attempting to extract it. The Shivering Isles, the plane of Oblivion owned by the mad god Sheogorath, is divided into two very different regions. These include Mania to the north and Dementia to the south. Mania is a very colorful and vibrant location, complete with all manner of mushrooms and colorful trees. However, these are also akin to poison dart frogs, as this region, although visually wonderful, is the more dangerous of the two. Dementia is green, gray, and depressing. There are many creatures here as well, shifting from their northern counterparts in terms of camouflage. The plant and fungal life can look different even if they're the same species. They will also boast different ingredients as a result. Although Mania does have more pressing dangers than Dementia, one should not allow themselves to fall into a false sense of security. The Shivering Isles are, of course, a plane of oblivion. Fully distinct from its extra-Nirn counterpart, the Alocasia fruit of Mania is big, ovular, and blue. This mysterious fruit can offer health and fatigue restoration as well as light production. Again very different than asters known elsewhere, the Shivering Isles variety grows in the form of a terrestrial sea star. It can be used to dispel negative magical effects while also producing a shield around the drinker. This material comes from both the Dementia tree saplings as well as the namesake black tar mushroom trees. It can be used as a devastating poison, damaging health, fatigue, and speed while also adding an electrocution effect. The blisterpod mushroom grows primarily in Dementia. Although its exterior appearance may be scary, it provides only positive potion properties. Reminder to self, remove alliteration for sake of professionalism. The blister pod can restore and fortify magicka while also offering enhanced night vision and complete invisibility. This is a very useful mushroom to the master alchemist. Putrid gigantea, growing in Dementia, are an odorous species that seem to be a sort of mix between fungal and plant life. Inside is a congealed putrescence, which can be used in fire damage poisons. If mixed with benevolent ingredients, it can create potions of strength and magicka restoration. Although shaped like fungi, these are apparently plants. The flamestalk grows mostly in caves along roots of exterior trees. It glows bright orange, hence the name. If harvested, they can be used to make potions of health restoration, frost shielding, and invisibility. The tube-like fungi known simply as the fungal stalk can, much like Putrid gigantea, be used to create many beneficial potions, unlike what its appearance would suggest. It can restore and fortify health, restore strength, and allow the drinker to walk on water. This violet spore is indeed giant, a large spiked urchin coming from the Hydenum azure mushrooms, the azure pointing at the bluish color. This mushroom is one of the only ingredients from Mania which boasts fully beneficial properties. These include endurance restoration, life detection, health fortification, and frost shielding. They make for an expensive and useful potion, especially when seeking out the camouflaged scalon. Growing only in Dementia, the Letifer orca plant, noticeably unplant-like and lacking any resemblance to the common Orcanus orca, is an enigma. The digestive slime suggests that this must be akin to a pitcher plant. As such, it contains mostly negative effects, damaging health, fatigue, and magicka, a real detriment to whoever may try and consume it. The red kelp plant of Mania is also very confusing. Firstly, kelp is not a grass and is instead an algae, which means it shouldn't be able to stand freely. However, like marine kelp, it does contain gas bladders. Instead of holding the common oxygen, nitrogen, and CO2, it must be some mystically strong gas, as it is held aloft out of water. When used in alchemical pursuits, it can make potions of speed restoration, water breathing, disease cure, and magicka fortification. The water breathing effect is strangely ironic. Either way, this is a very useful ingredient to have a hold of, and potions made from it could probably sell well. This plant, which looks much like the flamestalk, can only be found in Dementia. It can be used to make very dangerous poisons of burden, paralysis, silence, and health damage. Whoever is on the unlucky end of this poison-tipped arrow will not be able to move, or even shout for help as they die slowly. Very brutal. The Screaming Maw, the third in a pentet of lookalikes, can only be found in Mania's cave systems. They can create potions that restore health and willpower, as well as allow life detection and chameleon, a great pairing with Teeth of the Skinned Hound for hunting. Found in Dementia, the swamp tentacle is another treat for the aquanaut. Although it must taste quite grimy, it can produce potions of water breathing, water walking, health fortification, and personality restoration. This is a true set of positive effects, something that seems to be decently common in the Shivering Isles as opposed to mundane Cyrodiil. The Thornhook, a branching version of our 5 lookalikes, can be found in Dementia's caves. It can be used to make poisons of luck and health damage, or conversely, potions of health fortification and magicka restoration. This is one of those elixirs that can go terribly wrong based upon one incorrect ingredient. Instead of black tar, the manic species of mushroom tree sapling offers unrefined green mote. These are only useful as poisons to drain health and fatigue from a foe. There are those who say it can also drain magicka and even one's knowledge, but this alchemist has yet to see those events take place. The Watcher's Eye, the sickly penultimate member of the look-alike Pintet, is only found in Dementia's caves. Although its exterior would suggest rot and disgust, its properties are anything but. Having gotten past that clever camouflage, the alchemist can make use of intelligence restoration, magicka fortification, spell reflection, and mystical light. Such a fortunate find. The waterroot pods look as though they are petrified jellyfish halted on their journey to the sky. If harvested, they offer health restoration, fire resistance, and shielding, as well as water breathing. All of these effects are beneficial to the consumer. Although thought to be completely carnivorous, I suggest it's not impossible that the Scalons eat this in order to enhance their natural abilities, as they are often seen inhabiting the same waters. Rootstocks grow in nearly all caves across the Shivering Isles and are notable for their wispy stalks. As such, their tips are known as wisp cores.
Sap.
These can be used to restore one's intelligence, allow them to blend in with surroundings, and create light. The last of these effects makes much sense, having come from these faintly glowing bulbs at the end of each stalk. The final glowing bastion of the look-alike Pintet, the Withering Moon, can be found in caves or ruins. They cast a dim green light around themselves, making them clearly apparent. If consumed, they produce magicka restoration, shielding, cure of disease, and spell reflection. These are yet another magical and powerful ingredient from the Shivering Isles. For the final ingredient in our foraging trip, we have the Worm's Head Cap. This beautiful purple mushroom can be harvested for a variety of positive effects. It can restore luck, fortify fatigue, and allow one to have better night vision. Concoctions including this reagent must be mixed carefully so as to avoid allowing paralysis into the final solution. I suggest locals be convened with in order to ensure correct procedure, though in the realm of the Mad God, there are few sane enough to trust.
You've killed my child! How dare you! Get out of my sight!
Now that we have foraged for all possible materials, let us begin the hunt for all other organics that can be found through such means. This meat has to be very gamey and is reminiscent of the wild hog situation still occurring in the United States. Over 2.6 million feral hogs exist across the states, causing many problems for all sorts of people and animals, as they are an invasive species introduced in the 1600s. As such, I find it fitting that one of its effects is that of burden. Somewhere across the Valus Mountains, the ability for bone meal to produce telekinesis effects was lost. Perhaps it had to do with the way the dead were consecrated in the ancestral tombs, as opposed to how they are laid to rest in the burial bunkers. Now it simply offers Night Eye, fire resistance, and luck fortification. The claws of Oblivion's Clanfear are strangely purposeful. On one claw, they offer resistance or complete eradication of common diseases. On the other, they can make poisons to damage health and cause paralysis. All in all, these are a very useful ingredient, and their price of 50 gold per unit can be understood. Crab meat is known to produce potions of shock and fire shielding, something that clearly aids in the survival of their species, as they can be found almost anywhere in Tamriel. Those found in Cyrodiil are particularly small, and thus very easy to hunt. The Daedra Heart, if somehow acquired, can produce health potions, but that is not all. They can also produce poisons which damage the magicka stores of an opposing mage, while simultaneously rendering them incapable of using what they have left. It is a very useful concoction if one can predict their opponents. Coming from the Daedra Spider, this silk can produce potions of Night Eye, as well as Chameleon, allowing the drinker to reduce their chance of being spotted while heightening their sense of others. This is a thief's best friend, though they would be hard-pressed to obtain it organically. Meaning venom in French, the Daedra venom can do a few notable things. For one, as the venom is used by Spider Daedra, it makes sense that it would be able to damage health and paralyze the prey, that way the spider could wrap them in a cocoon and suck out the insides. On the other Tarsus, they can create potions of damage reflection, providing both offensive and defensive effects for the drinker, should they know how to divide them. One of the fiercest creatures to be found in the Deadlands is the Daedroth. When ground, their teeth are able to provide effects of Night Eye and light, meaning that nothing is beyond one's vision. How these relate to the owner is unknown, but this alchemist can't imagine many have been close enough to chance further study. In Cyrodiil, the dregs have moved onto land, abandoning the water entirely. However, there are holdovers from their aquatic ancestors within the effects of their wax, namely the ability to breathe water. It can also produce poisons or allow one to resist poison. Ectoplasm can be used as a decent poison, harming the opponent through physical and electrical means. Some say electromagnetic waves can be felt from beyond the veil, and so perhaps this is the reason for the effect. The salts of the Flame Atronach can be difficult to acquire but are well worth the effort. In fact, talented mages who own property in the Jarrell Mountains can use them to conjure their very own elemental servant. As far as alchemical uses, these salts can create a poison of combustion. They can also create a potion of frost resistance, fire shielding, and magica restoration, drawing upon the strengths of the Flame Atronach as a magical being of fire. Similar to the salts of the Flame Atronach, frost salts beget the effects of fire resistance and frost shielding, as well as poisons of frost damage and silence, which disallows opposing mages to use their craft in battle. The dust of the mysterious glowing will-o-wisp can be used to make potions of spell reflection and light, drawing upon the physical aspects of its luminosity. Imp gall is a fairly useful ingredient. After dealing with the vile beasts, one can harvest bile from their insides in order to make potions of personality fortification and paralysis cure, as well as poisons of flame and mortal damage. As this is one of the only ingredients for personality fortification, the other being troll fat which shares the poisonous effect, it must be very carefully mixed by an expert alchemist. Minotaur horns are heavy, and this is shown in their burdening poison effect. However, they function as somewhat of an aphrodisiac in Cyrodiil, where, once ground and mixed into a potable solution, they can offer endurance fortification, paralysis resistance, and willpower restoration. It should be noted that this is only the case in Cyrodiil, at least as far as is known to this alchemist. Outside of Nirn, the horns of similar beasts produce little of value. From the poor rotten bodies of unlucky travelers come samples of mortal flesh. If one can pinch their nose and stomach the texture, a potion with this ingredient will provide health fortification. It can also be mixed with other unsavory ingredients to create poisons of luck and fatigue damage, as well as magical silencing. The sharp and rotten teeth of the ogre can be used to create poisons of intelligence and shock damage. For the careful alchemist, potions of paralysis resistance and strength fortification can also be created. The remains of a disease-ridden rodent, slabs of rat meat, are an understandably poor food choice. The only positive effect they offer is life detection, but it's a delicate balance between creating that potion and damaging your fatigue, magicka, and spellcasting ability. Scraped from the body of a slaughterfish, the scales can be harnessed to create potions for the aquanaut, both water-breathing and water-walking. The alchemist needs only choose what to mix with it for their desired method of study. The skin of the weak minions of Oblivion can be used for potions of shock resistance, but also damage reflection, a rare and useful effect. Said to come from the inner abdomen of the Spriggan, the taproot can be used for a variety of beneficial potions. These include luck restoration, poison resistance, and shock shielding. The last effect calls to mind the survival of some trees post-electrocution by lightning. Perhaps there is some bit of this within the evolution of the Spriggan. Extracted from the mangy bodies of the three-eyed troll, this fat can be used to fortify one's personality, perhaps as a result of proving they bested a troll in combat, though they could have purchased it from someone else. Still, the unobservant alchemist could easily mistake their way into drinking a strong poison instead, one that damages agility and willpower along with general health. A rare and dangerous material, the ashes of vampire spawn can be used in multiple ways. First, it can be used as a potion, including the disease resistance and invisibility vampires employ. As they are already infected with a strong disease, it makes sense that other common diseases would be outcompeted. The second method one could employ with this material is a poison of silence and frost damage, chilling the bones of the opposing mage and rendering them useless. Much care should be taken with these ashes, lest you ingest them before completing the concoction, thus rendering yourself an alchemical source. The meat of the peaceful Cyrodiilic deer can be used to restore health while also giving the drinker two other useful properties. They will feel lighter, taking part in the deer's agile gait, while also blending in with their environment, much like the coloration of their fur. The remains of the Storm Atronach can be used for a variety of purposes. For one, they can be used to reform the Atronach for further use. In terms of alchemical potential, they can be used to restore and fortify magicka, while also removing any negative spell effects. This makes a great companion drink for the mage. The first potential ingredient extracted from the remains of Shambles is a congealed bone marrow. With it, toxic poisons of frost, health, and magicka damage can be concocted. Not only that, but the poison will also paralyze the target. The second and final ingredient that can be produced from the multitudinous corpse of the Shambles is the Bone Shard. Coming from an unknown and unfortunate victim of the Shivering Isles, this shard now offers willpower restoration and frost shielding. From the amazing and dangerous elytra comes a mysterious ichor. The gruesome puddles of goop can be mixed with other reagents to create potions of chameleon, drawing on their camouflage adaptations, depending on which region of the Isles they inhabit. The Gnarls, very similar to the mundane Spriggan, boast bark with strong capabilities. These include endurance restoration, shielding, and fire shielding. These all stand to reason, allowing the otherworldly tree to defeat our average notions of their potential weaknesses. The Gromites form mounds of eggs all around water bodies, including hanging from rocks. These eggs, if harvested before they hatch into ballywogs, can be used to dispel negative magical effects, as well as produce chameleon to blend in with the environment, which may be necessary as the Gromites will probably hunt you down for killing their children. A relatively abundant creature, the skinned hound hobbles its way across both surface and subterranean locations. If bested in battle, the fangs can be broken off and powdered for use in potions with the following effects: poison cure, life detection, and invisibility. These effects draw from the nature of the hunting predator, allowing one to seek prey while remaining undetected. Yanking the tongues of the terrifying hunger will allow one to make potions which cure poison, disease, and fortify magicka, if one can survive the battle against strong, health-draining magic. The fins of the extremely dangerous Scalon creature are not worth the risk. If somehow obtained, they can be used to make potions of water breathing, but this can also be achieved by simply substituting common garlic in its stead. Otherwise, these fins can only be used to make shock and health poisons, which also burden the target. The Void Essence, a very mysterious red gem found in the core of a flesh atronach, is both a very beautiful and macabre ingredient. Obtaining them is a deadly art, but once acquired, they can be used to make fantastic potions which bring much life to the imbiber. They restore and fortify health while also fortifying strength and endurance. No wonder these atronachs are so hard to take down. There is but one inorganic ingredient to be noted within Cyrodiil. These are the purge blood salts, found only in a distinct vein within the deep confines of a certain cavernous home. The location will be further discussed later, but for now, all we need to note is that it offers the imbiber the ability to cure their vampirism. Like with all provinces, there are certain ingredients to be found which are only imported through distant trade routes. They are to be found only within shops or warehouses. These include the following. The apple is such a common fruit outside of Nirn, but feels very alien after visiting Vardenfell. Much like the other conventional foods, this apple heals one's fatigue. However, it also has the effect of health damage and has been known to be used as a poison, which connects to lots of popular folktales. This beef must be traded with other provinces, perhaps from Valenwood or some other location, as there are no beef animals within the confines of Cyrodiil. If used in potions, it offers general fatigue restoration. Although listed as being plant-based, this could also be considered fungal since it relies on yeast to grow. In fact, some modern bakers use clean hands with no gloves to create their craft. This has been said in some cases to change the flavor. If someone bakes for you in this way, you are getting a truly unique product that you quite literally may never taste again. There is something very valuable in that. Beyond this, it is just another common fatigue booster. Breaking character for a moment, while trying to find connections between dairy creation and the fire-resistant effects of this ingredient, I happened upon the story of the Great Butter and Cheese Fire of 1991, in which a fire at a Madison, Wisconsin factory resulted in $78 million of damages.
It literally came out in gushes. I mean, just like a dam opened up.
A literal river of butter, disgusting to look at, difficult to slog through, and firefighters were in it for days. It didn't take long before the first wall came thundering down.
I highly doubt that was the inspiration for this, but hey, who knows. The rest of the cheese wheel, probably a different type of cheese altogether, can damage your luck, but also fortify your willpower. One of the more subtle ingredients, common flour can be used to provide damage reflection when mixed with certain reagents such as scampskin. Simultaneously mundane and otherworldly, this combination is sure to help a combatant in their challenges. Closely related to the onion, the root of the Allium sativum is used in a great many dishes across the plains. The taste and scent of the plant will remain in and on the consumer for some time, as cysteine sulfoxide enters the bloodstream and, when affected by digestive enzymes, releases a smell that exits through the breath, sweat, and other means. Strangely, this has no effect on one's personality in Cyrodiil, but instead fortifies their strength at the cost of agility. It may also aid in disease resistance and potentially ward off vampires, though few know of the validity of these claims. Of the genus Ginkgophyta, only one species remains in existence, the Ginkgo biloba. According to Hardin the herbalist, the plant comes from the riparian areas of water bodies in Hammerfell. They provide restoration of speed and magicka fortification at the cost of luck. The ham found in Cyrodiil must be imported, as it is doubtful the same as the previously discussed boar meat. In this case, it can be used to make potions of health and fatigue restoration. Coming from the mysterious ironwood tree, these nuts have found their way into Cyrodiil. The special flora of Tamriel by Hardin the Herbalist suggests they come from trees in Skyrim boasting extremely durable wood, hence the name. They can be used to fortify health and restore one's intelligence. Artemisia vulgaris, or the common mugwort, is an invasive plant that outcompetes others with ease. Its rhizomes grow faster, putting out exudates in order to signal to other species that it owns the place. If the plentiful seeds are taken, a boon to the adventurer and environment, they can be used for health restoration. In fact, although more potent in alchemical form, the seeds themselves can be eaten for quick healing. Coming from the sheep stock in Cyrodiil, mutton offers fatigue restoration as well as negation of effects from harmful spells. This could connect to the wool of the sheep, protecting them from some form of harm. Allium cepa are known for their strong taste and smell, and are used to spruce up many dishes in Cyrodiil. These are imported from other regions, but not only for their taste. They can also create potions of water breathing and life detection, a very strange but fortunate elixir for marine enthusiasts. Another produce option comes from beyond the borders, the common orange. Coming from the Rutaceae family, these fruits offer shielding and life detection, though the unwary strainer will also throw burden into the mix. In the Rosaceae family, we find another type of fruit known as a pear. These sweet fruits are one of the only ingredients that can produce speed fortification potions, the other being a wisp stalk cap. This effect can also be flipped on an opponent as damage to the attribute, as well as being a direct poison to them. Oryza sativa, not to be confused with Vardenfell's salt rice, is not grown within the boundaries of Cyrodiil and must be imported. It can be used to restore fatigue and grant a shock shield. The dubiously named root pulp, notably lacking in origin, is one of the rarest ingredients in the province. It can be used to cure diseases, so it would be fantastic if its growth parameters were understood. Unfortunately, no one seems to know how these few samples got here, or who carried them. The shepherd's pie, introduced by a handful of great bakers in Cyrodiil, is one of the few alchemical ingredients to boast entirely positive effects. It can create a shield around you, dispel any negative magical effects on your person, and also cure diseases while fortifying your agility. It is a great wonder that prices of these pies are not skyrocketing, though from one alchemist to another, we should keep this secret to ourselves. Another favorite, the sweet cake, can be used to create potions of feather and health restoration. If one eats too much, they will become burdened, so it is wise to consume with care. The sweet roll is baked with immune support in mind, fortifying health and aiding in disease resistance. Other than that, they just taste delicious. Produced by locals who know the specific means to do so, the smoked ballywog leg must be purchased directly. If used in potions, it can offer fatigue and health restoration while also offering feather. This last effect may be connected to the buoyancy of a ballywog, which allows it to swim freely. Now that we have run through all of the potential ingredients one can reasonably be expected to come across in their travels, we should look toward the further refining of alchemical skill. If I were to suggest any one person for this, it would be Sindirian. I knew him for quite a long time, and he was always deep in his work, a true scholar. He only requested vintage wine in exchange for his knowledge of alchemy. Indeed, he was the best alchemist in all of Cyrodiil. He also studied the Nirn root, the most perplexing ingredient we covered in this province. With the help of the legendary hero of Kvatch, he was able to obtain over 100 samples, using them in a specific brew he called the Elixir of Exploration. With it, one could see in the dark, become invigorated in terms of health and fatigue, and finally, gain bonuses to skills such as Blade, Security, and Sneak. Of course, Sindirian kept the overall recipe to himself. This is quite unfortunate. Still, at least we have a record of what occurred, as well as a missive that we will read now. The Nirnroot Missive, by Master Alchemist Sindirian. This brings me to my next subject, the glowing root known as Nirnroot. Although the oddly tenacious root grows almost anywhere a significant body of water is present, this root is extremely rare and I believe soon to become extinct. I myself have yet to come across one of the gnarled shoots, as they're rarely inside of the roads that cross Cyrodiil. According to the records of the noted imperial herbalist Shivius Regalium, the Nirnroot once flourished and could be found all over the country, but he suspected a cataclysmic event severely stunted their growth. Although many scholars reject the proposal that the sun's death event of First Era 668 catastrophically affected plant life, Shivius feels that the Nirnroot's lineage was damaged by the lack of sun for a full year. Whereas other plant species tend to find a way, the Nirnroot's mysterious magical nature made it especially susceptible to this climate shift. While this may or may not be the case, it's certainly true that the recorded sightings of Nirnroot are declining as the years pass. The most perplexing facet of Shivius' studies is that his notes describe the root as having a yellowish glow. Contrary to this fact, the Nirnroot of today has a soft bluish or blue-white glow. Unfortunately, since not many studies of the Nirnroot were performed from Shivius' day until now, It's unknown when or why this occurred. What I'm proposing today is that the Nirn root, even though merely a plant, sensed impending extinction and therefore changed its own nature to survive. One of the more obvious facets of today's Nirn root that supports this theory is the fact that it can now survive underground without any sunlight at all. While it's true that generally only mosses and fungi grow in these environments, I have 2 signed depositions by persons claiming that they sighted the Nirn root in deep caves. Not once in Shivius's copious notes is a subterranean Nirn root mentioned. But how could this be? How could a surface-dwelling plant suddenly begin appearing in new locations radically different from its normal habitat? The answer, my fellow alchemists, is nestled within Shivius's own notes. Although he spends a great deal of time with the Nirn root in his laboratory, the one thing he neglected to test at a high enough level of detail was the soil. As stated previously, Shivius felt that the sun's death, the eruption of Red Mountain, contributed to the demise of Nirn root. Agreed. My amendment to that proposal is that the ash that fell from the sky that entire year mixed with the soil, and again due to the magical nature of the root, contributed to the aforementioned changes. The ash became a catalyst of sorts, forcing a change in the very makeup of the Nirn root. Although very little ash from that dark time remains, I have done tests on newer ash samples sent to me from Vardenfell. They show little to no magical properties, certainly none of which could affect a plant to that magnitude. However, the rare occurrence of what's known as ash salt in the normal ash does contain very potent magical abilities. In fact, some native Dunmer are said to harness that ability to create a cure for the blight, which pervaded their realm many years ago. I feel this magic, meshed with the Nirn root's inherent magic, caused the radical change. In essence, the root healed itself. To surmise, my 2 proposals are certainly linked. The plant needed to survive, and therefore used a byproduct of its destructor to do so. No other plant in nature has ever come close to this metamorphosis. I feel the Nirn root has accomplished, in a relatively short amount of time, what it would take other species millions of years to complete. Whatever the case may be, one thing is certain. The Nirn root is on a path to destruction. It contains untapped potential to create potions the likes of which have never been seen in our day. I propose to you today that we divert a small portion of our funds to an expedition to collect some of these roots to study. I have outlined this proposal for your perusal after this section of the symposium. Please seriously consider this proposal before it becomes too late, and the Nirn root becomes nothing but a memory. Thank you for your time. This missive is the exact reason that treatises such as this should exist. If it weren't for Sinderian's coverage of Shivius's notes, and hours of Sinderian's, it is quite possible that the knowledge, much like the potential fate of the Nirn root, would simply disappear from the world. It should be noted that the sun's death event mentioned in this missive does not refer to the eruption of Red Mountain in the 5th year of the 4th era. This is obvious to some, but I felt the need to reiterate. It instead refers to the first recorded eruption of Red Mountain in the 668th year of the 1st era. Here, much plant and animal life was changed forever. So too was the Nirn root. Sinderian posits that the Nirn root hastened its own evolution in order to survive, which could also explain its mostly negative qualities when consumed, an adaptation to prevent further losses. This is genius, and certainly not out of the realm of possibility for the magical plant. Recovered through undisclosed means, the diary of one Amantius Electus has been obtained and transcribed into history. Here we shall read it together. The following is the diary of one Amantius Electus. I've planted the seeds of the drinkers. Soon I shall know if my theories hold true. The first shoots have appeared. I must make sure to continue the precise schedule of nutrient solutions. Small drinker fronds are clearly visible. This is a critical time in their development. I'm almost out of rat blood. I have to catch some more of the filthy beggars. The young plants are juveniles now. I can see them waving as if in a breeze. Although the air in my cellar is still as death. I'm having a hard time catching any more cats. I may have to start using dogs. The damn drinker plants have a voracious appetite. One of them cut me today. I'll have to be more careful. My creations are refusing to feed. As an experiment, I offered a drop of my own blood, which one of them drank greedily. The other drinkers are beginning to wither. I collected a bucket of human blood from the healers. I had to pay her an exorbitant amount to keep her tongue still. The drinkers are doing much better. Am I doing the right thing? The benefit of these plants to all of Cyrodiil is beyond doubt, but the price may be too high. It is one of the most difficult decisions of my life. I have destroyed my notes for how to hybridize drinkers. I set the trays on the roof where the sun could strike them. An hour after sunrise, they were all dead. My attempt to create a hybrid of vampire and plant has failed. They were just too dangerous. 2 parts grave dust, 1 part ash salts, mixed with human blood, exposed to 2 hours of moonlight each night. In all my years of alchemical study, I have rarely come across such a foolish individual. This devious endeavor was ridiculous, and his suggestion of potential benefits to the province is similarly unfounded. One could make the argument that he planned to conduct tests on these plants in order to find a cure to vampirism, but that would be useless. Where's the control variable? Further, these are plants, not people. What may work for the tissue of plant life may very well be ineffective on humanoid beings. I do respect the research for purely intellectual reasons, however, it is a boon to society that Amantius nipped his project in the bud. Finally, we come to a favorite story of mine. Written by Morrowind Intro, a descendant of the subject of this story, Cyrodiil Intro explains the exploits and successes of Alchemical Abodes, the original formulator of alchemy into a scientific field. Let us read. Cyrodiil Intro by Morrowind Intro. I am 611 years old. I have never had children of my own, but I have many nieces and nephews and cousins who have been raised with the tales and traditions of our ancient, illustrious, and occasionally notorious clan, the Cyrodiil. Few families in Tamriel can boast so many famous figures wielding so much power over the fate of so many. Our warriors and kings are stuff of legend, and it is not to dismiss their honor and their achievements to say you have heard quite enough about them. I myself have never picked up a sword or written an important law, but I am part of a lesser known but still important Cyrodiil tradition, the Way of the Wizard. My own autobiography would be of little interest to posterity, though my nephew, nieces, and cousins indulge me to tell wild tales of my life in the chaotic second era of Tamriel. But I have a few ancestors whose stories should be told. They may have changed history as we know it as dramatically as my better-known relatives, but their names are in danger of being forgotten. Most recently, Lysandus, the king of Daggerfall, was able to conquer his ancient enemies of Sentinel in part thanks to his court sorceress, Medora Cyrodiil. Her grandfather, Jovron Cyrodiil, was imperial battle mage to the court of the Dunmer Empress of Tamriel, Cotariah, assisting her in creating peace in a time of turmoil. His great-great-grandfather, Cyrodiil Cyrodiil, had a similar role with the first potentate, and encouraged the Guild Act, without which we would not have all the professional organizations we have today. His ancestor many times back was the witch Raven Cyrodiil, who, with her better-known cousins Aiden and Ryain, brought an end to the tyranny of the latter Alessian Empire. Mallow, chill. Before the Sigics of Artaeum, it is said she created the art of enchantment, learning how to bind a soul into a gem and use that to ensorcel all manners of weaponry. But it is the story of an ancient ancestor even more ancient, more distant than Raven I wish to tell. Alchemical Abodes harkens back to the humble beginnings of our clan in the tiny farming village of Cyrodiil on the banks of the river Calmus, which was then called the Cyrodiil, hence the family name. Like all on Somerset Isle in those days, he was a simple planter of the fields, but while others only grew enough to sustain their immediate kin, even distant cousins of the Cyrodiils worked together. They would decide as a group which fields were best for wheat, orchard, vine, livestock, or apiary, and thereby always have the best yields of any farm which worked alone, doing the best as it could with what it had. Alchemical had a particularly poor farm for most kinds of agriculture, but small herbs found its stony, loamless, acidic soil very comfortable. Out of necessity more than anything else, he became an expert on all manners of herbs. For the most part, of course, they were used in flavor and cooking, but as you know, hardly any plant grows on the surface of our world without a magical potential. Even so, long ago, witches already were in existence. It would be ridiculous for me to suggest that Alchemical Abodes invented alchemy. What he did, what we can all be grateful for, is that he formulated it into an art and science. There were no witches' covens in Cyrodiil, and of course there would be no mages' guilds yet for thousands of years, so people would come to him for cures. He learned for himself the exact formula for combining black lichen and rue brush to create a cure for all manners of poison, and the amount of willow anther to crush and mix with chokeweed to cure diseases. There were few much greater threats in Cyrodiil in those peaceful days than disease or accidental poisonings. Yes, there were some dark forces in the wilderness, trolls, chimera, the occasional malevolent fairy folk, and will-o'-the-wisp. But even the youngest, most foolish Altmer knew how to avoid them. There were, however, a few unusual threats which Alchemical had a hand in defeating. One of the tales told of him, that I believe to be true, is how he was brought a young niece who had been suffering from an unknown disease. Despite his ministrations, she grew weaker and weaker every morning. Finally, he gave her a bitter-tasting drink, and the next morning, ashes were found all around her bed. A vampire had been feeding on the poor girl, but Alchemical's potion had turned her very blood into poison, without harming her in the least. If only this formula had not been lost to the mists of history. This would have been enough to make him a minor but significant figure in the annals of early Somerset, but at that point in history a barbarian tribe called the Lokvar had found their way down the Cyrodiil River and recognized Cyrodiil as a rich target for raids. The Cyrodiil, not being warriors yet but simple farmers, were helpless and could only flee and watch the Lokvar take the best of their crops raid after raid. Alchemical, however, had been experimenting with the vampire dust and brought his cousins to him with a plan. The next time the Lokvar were sighted on the Nirn, the word went out and all the most able-bodied came to Asliel's laboratory. When the barbarians arrived in Cyrodiil, they found the farms deserted and assumed that all had fled as usual. As they set about stealing the bounty, they suddenly found themselves under attack by invisible forces. Believing the Nirn farms to be haunted, they ran away very quickly. They attempted a few more raids, for their greed would always eventually overpower their fear, and each time they were set upon by attackers who they could not see. As barbaric as they were not stupid, and they changed their mind about the source of their defeat. It could not be that the farms were haunted because the crops were still being tended and harvested, and the animals seemed to show no fear. The Lokvar decided to send a scout to the farm to see if he could spy their secrets. The scout sent word back to the Lokvar that the Nirn farms were populated with flesh and blood, entirely visible Altmer. He continued to watch as his barbarian cohorts moved down the river, and he saw the elderly children flee for the hills, while the able-bodied farmers and their wives went to Asliel's laboratory. He saw them go in, he saw none come out. As usual, the Lokvar were repelled by invisible forces, but their scouts soon told them what he saw happening in the laboratory. The next night, 2 of the Lokvar approached Asliel's farm very stealthily, and managed to kidnap him without alerting the rest of the Nirn. The Lokvar chieftain, knowing that the farmers could no longer count on the alchemist to make them invisible, considered an immediate attack on the farms. But he was a vengeful sort, and felt he had been humiliated by these simple farmers. A crafty plan emerged in his mind. What if the Nirn, who always saw his barbarian tribe coming, for once did not? Imagine the slaughter if no one even had a chance to flee. The scout had told the chieftain that Asliel had used the dust of a vampire to make the farmers invisible, but he was not sure what the other ingredient had been. He described an incandescent powder that Asliel had mixed into the dust. Asliel, of course, refused to help the Lokvar, but they were experts in torture as well as pillage, and he knew he would have to talk or die. Finally, after hours of torture, he agreed to tell them what the incandescent powder was. He did not know the name, but he called it glow dust, the only remains of a slain will-o-wisp. He told them they would need a lot of it if they wanted to turn the whole tribe invisible for the raid. The Lokvar grumbled that not only did they have to find and kill a vampire to attain his dust, but find and kill several will-o-wisps to get theirs. In a few days' time, they came back with the ingredients the alchemist asked for. The chieftain, not being a complete idiot, made Asliel taste the potion first. He did as he was told and turned invisible, demonstrating that it did truly work. The chieftain put him to work creating more. No one apparently noticed that while he did, he was nibbling on black lichen and rue brush. The Lokvar took the potion as he doled it out, and soon, but not too soon that they didn't suffer. They were all dead. The scout who had seen Asliel mixing the invisibility potion had apparently mistook the glow of the candlelight in the laboratory for an incandescence which the second ingredient of the invisibility potion did not possess. The second ingredient was actually dole, simple redwort, one of the most common herbs in Tamriel. When they had insisted during torture that Asliel tell them what the incandescent powder was, Asliel remembered that he had once experimentally mixed glow dust and vampire dust together once, and created a powerful poison. It was simple enough to steal a little redwort from the barbarian's camp, mix that with the vampire and glow dust mixture, and create a potion that was in fact an invisibility poison. After curing himself, he gave the poison to the barbarians. The Lokvar, being dead, never again raided the Nirn farms, and having no other enemies, they were able to grow more and more prosperous and powerful. Generations later, they left Somerset and began their historic adventures on the Tamriel mainland. Asliel Nirn, because of his excellence as an alchemist, was invited to Artaeum and became a Psijic. It is not known how many more of the common formulas we know today were invented by him there, but I have no doubt the science and art of alchemy as we know it today would not exist without him. But that is all in the distant past. Asliel's innovations, like my modest ones, like the achievements of the Nirnis through history, are but a stepping stone to the wonders which will come in the future. I wish I could be there to witness them, but if I can only share some of the past with the children of the Nirn and the children of Tamriel, then I will consider my life well spent. This is such a wonderful and invigorating tale for all alchemists, and I consider it to be necessary reading for those wanting to engage in the practice. Indeed, I wish I could travel back in time and speak with Asliel. However, I would not want to affect the timeline or his triumphs. Written by Aliandin Materi, this book is a short primer on basic alchemical practice. The Fundaments of Alchemy by Aliandin Materi. Often overlooked by aspiring mages, alchemy is a time-honored, rewarding discipline that can change the lives of those who master it. It is difficult and often dangerous to advance one's knowledge of the materials used in alchemical formulas, but continued study and hard work will, in the end, reward the alchemist greatly. Before success can be achieved or even attempted, the beginning alchemist must understand the basic principles behind his craft. Many items in our world, mostly organic in nature, can be broken down into more fundamental essences with magical properties. The more skilled the alchemist, the more properties of an ingredient that can be harnessed. Combining the essences of 2 or more ingredients can result in the creation of a potion, which anyone may then drink. Legend has it that a truly great alchemist can brew potions from a single ingredient, a feat well beyond the capabilities of most. The alchemist's potion can have several effects depending on the ingredients used, and not all effects are beneficial. In many cases, recipes result in a potion with a mix of positive and negative effects. It is up to the alchemist to determine which recipes yield the best results. It is worth noting that potions can be created to have only negative effects and be used as poisons. This practice is not recommended by the author, and this text shall not discuss such potions further. Wortcraft is, in fact, amateur alchemy. Eating an ingredient requires grinding it against the teeth, which occasionally releases its simplest essence and results in a fleeting effect on the eater. Wortcraft never has as strong a result as a potion created using the proper tools. An alchemist's tools. The mortar and pestle is the alchemist's most important and essential tool. Without it, no ingredient can be correctly prepared for use in a potion. The budding alchemist is advised to keep a mortar and pestle on hands at all times and become comfortable with its use early on. The simple grinding of an ingredient is the most fundamental step in brewing potions. When properly ground, the petals of the redwort flower yield a powder that can, when mixed correctly with another ingredient such as ginseng, create a potion to cure poisons. This is one formula that many alchemists are quick to learn and retain, as mistakes in potion making often require its use. The advanced alchemist has other tools at his disposal to improve the quality of his potions. A retort can be employed to purify the mixture, improving the positive effects of a potion. Washing the mixture through an alembic helps to distill the potion, reducing any negative effects. And a calcinator can be used to burn away impurities in the mixture, increasing the potency of all the potion's effects. While these apparatus are not necessary to create potions, it is advised that they be used whenever possible. Ingredient combination. A potion is only as good as its ingredients. Only those with identical effects may be combined to make a potion. Up to 4 ingredients may be successfully used in a single potion. As the alchemist gains skill in preparing ingredients, new properties may be discovered and can be used in creating potions. While this can be an exciting time, expanding the alchemist's repertoire, he should take care to check carefully which effects his potions will contain when he's done brewing. Many established recipes may have new results, not all of which are beneficial. Overall, this is a fine beginner's explanation on the basics of alchemy. Now that we have discussed the relevant books found in Cyrodiil, we should look into the 2 homes which suit an alchemist very well. These are the Deepscorn Hollow and the Frostcrag Spire. Deepscorn Hollow was previously mentioned as the sole origin of Purge Blood salts. Not only is this true, but whoever lives here also has access to a continually regrowing garden of all sorts of reagents, most of them perfect for use in poisons. Indeed, it would take a dastardly sort to live here in the depths. Next we have Frostcrag Spire. This tower is perhaps the better of the 2 locations. The primary reasons are as follows. 1. The resident can make use of Atronach summoning by way of using their relevant salts. These Atronachs will move, attack, and wait upon command, adding to the usefulness of their reagents. 2. The upper tower contains a magically imbued alchemy station which can enhance one's alchemical abilities beyond what they are naturally capable of. And finally, 3rd, there is this gorgeous garden, complete with docile versions of plants found in the Deadlands. For all of these reasons and more, Frostcrag Spire is the perfect home for an alchemist. This region is great for nearly any alchemist, save for those wishing to pierce the skies. Those of you should venture to Morrowind. Still, for dungeon delvers, healers, warriors, and even thieves, the alchemical bounty of the province of Cyrodiil cannot be understated. Breaking character for one moment, it should be noted that the removal of levitation magic was a limitation in place to save immersion, since most towns are loaded in separate cells, and it would be really unfortunate for an adventurer to peek into their empty walls. On the topic of changes, the real-world ingredients found in Oblivion are very strange and feel almost out of place compared to Morrowind. Many of them are real plants, hence the scientific names and so on. This game was the first sign for me of the overall homogenization of the series. This has continued in Skyrim as well, but that is a topic for another day. Many complain of streamlining, and I do see where they're coming from. Though at the end of the day, I still love Oblivion and would like to express to those who think I dislike it that this is not the case. I'm simply noting changes made, as is the point of videos like this. Now, dear listener, we shall move into the next and final leg of our journey, visiting the cold lands of Skyrim. Just north of Cyrodiil are the frosty regions of Skyrim. Despite what many think, there exists a large amount of ingredients that find these harsh climates suitable. The province also has a more diverse ecosystem in some ways than Cyrodiil. We shall discuss these as we move through the land, but first, some history. The version of Skyrim that you are accustomed to has come about after around 200 years beyond my time. Following the events of the Oblivion Crisis, all the mages guilds which once offered academic exploration in the fields of magic were disbanded. This happened slowly, of course, but came about due to finger-pointing around the College of Conjuration specifically. Mages were accused of having summoned Daedra with abandon, leading to the opening of the Oblivion Gates. As things are oft guilty by association, so came to be the other disciplines, even including alchemy. And so it was that the guild itself was eventually unraveled, its scholars left to disperse and meet elsewhere. One such location is the College of Winterhold, an institution not exempt from the weary eye of the commoner. In the past, part of the town gave way to the sea. For many, it seemed all too coincidental that the college stayed aloft. Although this is certainly curious, there's no evidence to suggest any foul play. Other than this college, there are a handful of alchemy shops in the region. The owners of these shops often offer training in the practice, as well as many ingredients and potions. There's typically an alchemy table set up in each of them as well, free to use. The alchemy tables are Skyrim's answer to the bulky, mobile apparatus common in other regions. Here one can see the usual pieces incorporated into the table. The calcinator glows orange with burning coal. Above it is the alembic system, funneling down to a round flask. The vapors then run through the retort and into the central basin. For what reason the basin glows green is unknown to all but the manufacturer, someone equally elusive. The ridges along the table can allow the mixture to flow into smaller sub-basins, meaning multiple mixtures can be tested at once if allowed. When the solution is adequate, the alchemist simply scoops the liquid into a container for use. You may ask where the mortar and pestle are. Well, it seems common practice that travelers in Skyrim carry at least this on their person at all times. However, none deign to use it alone to make potions, preferring to instead make use of the all-in-one lab. Some, including myself, will point to this system as being somewhat limiting. One can no longer reliably make potions on the road when they're in need. On the other hand, they do not need to carry all their apparatus with them on long journeys, as they can reliably find a public table in most major cities. Beyond the physical means, we should look to the mental. The skill of alchemy in Skyrim is taught by only a handful of people. Although the knowledge they offer is great, there's almost no better way to learn the virtues of a reagent other than to create mixtures through trial and error. By doing this, or engaging in the more dangerous wartcraft, the alchemist can enhance their skills little by little. They will often pick up tricks such as how to prevent negative effects, to harvest ingredients more efficiently, to make more potent and lasting poisons, or even to develop resistance to said poisons. The most common container for custom potions is the cheap but sturdy red bottle. For poisons, they often go in green, opaque containers that are hard to confuse with others. Beyond these, there are a great many concoctions specific to the region, the recipes for which are out of reach for the adventuring alchemist. They come in beautiful bottles of color gradients and unique labeling. Finally, we can look at the alcohol that Skyrim is known for, namely, mead, coming from the fermented honey of native bees. It is a large industry in the province, as Nords are known for their iron stomachs and games of drink. Beyond Skyrim, we can look at the devastated landscape of Solstheim, where House Redoran still tries to maintain stability. Here, one Gildus Sadri runs a bar called the Wretched Netch.
I've seen plenty of drunks every day, and I'll tell you right now, that Netch was sick. True story, friend. True story.
He brews a specific form of Sujama, as well as common forms of Flynn, Sheen, and even a special Ashfire mead. These are a sure morale boost to my fellow Dunmer who have been through the tragedy of the Red Year. There are over 100 ingredients to be found in Skyrim and its peripheral islands. Without further ado, let us don our cloaks and get out there. One of the 9 holds in Skyrim, Eastmarch exists in, well, the East. This is perhaps the most unique region of the entire province. Instead of being a cold, lush tundra or a freezing mountain range, Eastmarch contains sulphurous pools of heated water, steaming and bubbling at the surface. Between these pools are rocky crags and strange plants, such as the creep cluster we will discuss. There are also a few hills here and there, one of which playing host to a dragon roost. If coming here to harvest ingredients, one should be very fast, but also quiet. Keeping to the forests on the edge of the region is also a safe plan, but will not allow an all-encompassing understanding of what the hold has to offer. The creep cluster gets its name from the way its tendrils reach out slowly in all directions, almost like fungal hyphae. Strange, though, is the method by which this plant derives nutrients. The red coloration is consistent with carotenoids, which do absorb light for photosynthesis. However, there seems to be no true root system, but instead a series of holdfasts that maintain its location. This removes one method of energy retrieval, as roots would be necessary to break into the rocks for minerals. Whatever this plant may be, it can be harvested for potions of magica restoration and burden alleviation. This yellow flower, a beacon across the pale rock of Eastmarch, is a boon for any who should happen upon it. It can offer fire resistance, true to its name, as well as fortification of 3 skills, including bartering, illusion magic, and the use of 2-handed weaponry. It also has a pink petal extending from the center of the plant, or perhaps a modified stamen. This accounts for the tongue of the dragon. According to Agneta Follia, author of The Herbalist's Guide to Skyrim, these grapes used to be very sweet and enjoyable. However, attempts to stave off their extinction from overharvest have left them somewhat diminished, a lesser version of their once delicious selves. Perhaps this loss of flavor is what ultimately aided in their preservation, dissuading would-be predators. Other than use in wines, mages can use them for magic of fortification and regeneration. Falkreath Hold is a beautiful region in the southern reaches of Skyrim. There are tall, verdant pines and many green grasses. There's also Lake Ilinalta and the beginnings of White River. Although often overcast, this region holds too much beauty to ignore. There are many different types of mushrooms and other vegetation that grow here, enjoying the slightly warmer climate as the hold is nearest to Cyrodiil. Among the other plants are the occasional deadly nightshade, an ominous growth considering Falkreath's main claim to fame as a cemetery town. The blue mountain flower is one of 4 different color varieties. This flower specifically can offer health restoration and fortification, as well as boost to the conjuration skill. It's a good thing these flowers are so common, so that they may be used in medicine. However, one should be careful to make use of the conjuration properties away from fearful eyes. The purple mountain flower is a very common plant throughout the wilds of Skyrim. They can be used to restore stamina and possess an effect of frost resistance, though they do not seem to grow in the northern regions. Still, these are abundant and often used in medicinal mixtures. The red mountain flower is analogous to the blue and purple varieties, restoring magicka to fill out the trio. It also fortifies magicka if mixed with an appropriate reagent. These grow commonly among the other colors. It is hard to narrow down which part of the Asteraceae family these specific thistles lie in, but their effects are the more important aspect. The primary ones include frost resistance and heavy armor fortification. Their purple flowers can be noticed all across the warmer regions of Skyrim. Haafingar Hold is the smallest of the 9 and lies to the northwest. This region contains Solitude, the current capital of Skyrim, as well as a mix of hills, forests, and waterways. The Druidak Mountains can be somewhat difficult to traverse, but those who do cross it will find a few frost-resistant ingredients, including the main reagent of the region, the common grass pod. A very hardy, cold-tolerant grass grows along the northern shores of the province. The seed heads are bulbous and pod-shaped. These can be harvested and used in potions for poison resistance and magic restoration. They can also fortify alteration, the same magical school responsible for spells of protective barriers, which may be how the grass is able to survive such difficult conditions. Hjalmarch Hold is home to the swampy marshlands of Skyrim. Strangely, it exists just east of Haafingar Hold and mixes the commonly warm wetlands of other provinces with the ever-present cold conditions of Skyrim. Here, a great number of toxic plants grow, as well as different fungal species that surround the water bodies. This region is also known to hold many beasts behind the mystifying fog, so it is best to visit with a group and only in daylight hours. These gnarled branches appear to be dead, though their roots are alive with magical properties. These can be used to create poisons of paralysis and stamina damage, or potions of one-handed and marksman fortification. All of these effects are beneficial to rangers and hunters, a large boon for those following deer through the rift. When consumed as a tea in small portions, Canis root can also be used as a sleep aid, reducing one's stamina temporarily. Some say the death bell grows in places where unfortunate deaths have occurred. Others say it is a beacon used to lure people to their demise, however that may happen. Beyond the rumors, one thing is certain. This plant can surely bring fate to bear. It is only capable of producing poisons, including health damage, stamina ravaging, slowness, and weakness to poison itself. The resultant poison, if applied multiple times, becomes exponentially more deadly, so this would be a slow but certain method of poisoning an opponent of some sort through their daily meals. The giant lichen, boasting abnormally large fruiting bodies, can be found clinging to rocks in the marshes of Hjalmarch. They could be used to create potions of magic restoration in a pinch, but come with many negative effects. In this alchemist's opinion, this ingredient is best left avoided. A pity, considering how difficult it was to locate for this treatise. This fungal pod, found in the marshes of Hjalmarch, looks like a fungal earth star of the Geostrales family. These are very common and can be used to resist shock and restore health, a worthy ingredient to be harvested on site. Although not poisonous, they do not have a favorable taste. Still, many native peoples used earth star mushrooms in traditional medicines, and so it aligns with the swamp fungal pod's roborative properties. The Pale exists in the central northern region of Skyrim and is home to lots of snow and pine trees. It's often high in elevation and can be somewhat annoying to travel through. There are a few ingredients to be found here that cannot be found elsewhere, but they do bring a bit of luster to an otherwise uncomfortable hold to travel in. These common berries have a quite unique effect. They offer resistance to fire, frost, and shock all at once. No other ingredient can boast this. Luckily, they grow abundantly in the northern regions of the province and are at no danger of disappearing from overconsumption. The Reach is located in the western region of Skyrim, and its climate and topography are very unique. There are sheer mountains, but also lowlands with coursing rivers. All across the green, relatively warm hold are juniperberry bushes, almost calling to mind the comberry of Morrowind's Ascadian Isles. Owing to the many different types of shelters in the region, there are many types of animals that nest only here, including a bird species we will discuss later, the rock warbler. Other than this, common plants will grow along disturbed roads, and more dangerous, rare materials can also be acquired if one has the fortitude to hunt them down. Juniper berries, coming from small trees in the Reach, are commonly used to add flavoring to mead within the province. As far as alchemical properties, these berries offer marksman fortification and regeneration of health. The former effect would be very useful in its native region, which offers wide open views for hunting. The perpetual autumn of the Rift is something to behold. The aspen trees are always a beautiful mix of yellow and orange on white bark. Between their thin trunks, the leaf-littered ground is mostly clear to see. There are plenty fungi and plants to be harvested here, but the Rift also boasts a fantastic fishing scene on Lake Honrick. All of these varied environments make the Rift a great place for an alchemist to visit, so long as they keep their pockets zipped tight. Foliota squarosa is a unique mushroom in that it grows purely upon trees and limbs that have already been partially decomposed by other fungi. They offer fortification of illusion, stamina regeneration, and added carry weight. These are great fungi for mages that have not spent much time at the gym. Whiterun Hold is best known for the titular city centered directly in the primary valley of Skyrim. The tundra extends far to the west and contains sparse trees and orange grasses. These plains and minor hills also offer shelter and ambush spots for various animal species. As far as vegetative life, most of these are plants with very little fungi to be found. The soil is tenable, and many settlers work farms in the region, bringing exotic plants to the market. There are also many insects that populate the slightly warmer region, pollinating flowers that grow along the road and within the tundra proper. If traveling here for alchemical foraging, I advise one to keep their eyes and ears out for the common sabercat, and of course to keep a wide distance from the massive giants that call the region home. Levangula angustifolia is a common plant in the tundras of Skyrim. Easily recognizable by its purple flowers, this ingredient is a common home remedy for magic resistance. It can also fortify stamina and conjuration. Mora tabanella are a white rot bracket fungi found on many down limbs and trunks throughout Skyrim. Although the name would imply it, these mushrooms seem not to have any relation to the Daedric Prince or Maes Mora, though it would be really interesting if they did. Properties of magic restoration and illusion fortification can be drawn from this fungal body, so perhaps someone had a hallucination that Mora did in fact visit them, hence the name. The deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna, is commonly used in poisons all throughout Tamriel. This is due to its triple effect of health damage, damage to magic regeneration, and lingering stamina damage. All three of these effects are quite detrimental, and an alchemist should be careful dealing with others who seem to employ the reagent often. In Skyrim, the Nirn roots glow green, as well as regrow after a certain amount of time. For some reason, the price of these potions is over 12 times that of regular poisons, even though they have the same magnitude. Perhaps it's just the gilded social aspect. Otherwise, they have value for being sources of invisibility, ironically, and magic resistance. We will speak later of the developments this plant has made over the past 200 years. Tundra cotton is incredibly common in, well, the tundra. These plants are used in weaving fabrics as well as in alchemy, and provide a range of fortifications, especially for the mage. The others include block and barter, the latter of which makes sense as linens and clothing are something all members of society must purchase. Wheat is commonly grown across all the regions and is almost always a staple of alchemy. Here, it can be used to restore and fortify health stores of the drinker. This is an incredibly useful dual effect, however one should be careful not to get used to their sudden vitality. Potions are temporary, and immediate damage is lasting. Winterhold, the final of the 9 holds, exists in the northeastern reaches of the province. It's very cold, much like the Pale. Here, only the hardiest of plants, namely snowberries and spiky grasses, can survive. There's a decent fishing scene to the east of the region, as the waters open up to the Sea of Ghosts. If traveling outside of Winterhold, it is a good idea to keep frost-resistant potions on hand, as well as the optional invisibility draught, the latter of which could be useful for keeping oneself hidden from the many hardened predators of the region. Other than this, there is not much to say about Winterhold. As such, we should move into some of the caves of the region. As with all provinces, there exist caves which have been carved throughout time. Either by water or wind, these locations came to be, hosting all manner of creatures, but also plant and fungal life. Here, we will take a look at these, most notably a range of fungal species. Named so for their blood-smeared appearance, these fungi are often found in dark caves, their reddened caps giving them away. They can be used to weaken opponents toward fire and poison, or could be made into potions which fortify block and add magic resistance. The closest extra-Nirn counterpart I can think of is Heidenel and Pecky, the bleeding tooth mushroom. However, other than titles, they don't have much alike. Another common mushroom, the blisterwort, can be used for a couple surprising purposes. They do contain the potential for stamina poison, but should instead be used for their smithing fortification and weak healing properties if one is in a pinch. A common mushroom also found in Cyrodiil, the Amanita muscaria, can be used to make potions of fire resistance, two-handed fortification, and stamina regeneration. If not mixed carefully, it could also lead one to lose their wits and develop anger issues, so choose your reagents carefully. Beyond this, it is notable that neither the Skyrim nor Cyrodiilic versions of the Amanita muscaria sport the white dots that their extra-Nirn counterpart is known for. Glowing mushrooms can be found in many caves throughout Skyrim. They're recognized easily by their deflated, jellyfish-like appearance. Similar to the luminous Russula of Morrowind, these fungi do in fact glow, hence the name. However, these are bracket fungi unlike their Bitter Coast relatives. If consumed, they offer many beneficial effects, including shock resistance and fortification of destruction magic, smithing, and health. Hanging moss can be found in many areas of Skyrim, usually along rocks or anthropogenic structures. As long as there is a stable material they can climb, within view of the sun, they will grow. If harvested, it can be used to fortify one's health and one-handed capabilities. Growing along seams in caves, the orange-capped imp stool is primarily used for poisons. These include health damage, lingering health damage, and paralysis. A weak health restoration potion can also be created, but there are far more efficient ingredients with this effect. Also, to this date, this alchemist has yet to see an imp rest upon the mushroom, let alone fly through Skyrim in general. This fungal body has a direct relation to the Daedric Prince Namira, she of great decay and disgust. This makes some sense, as fungi do help to rot and break down materials. Perhaps this is an ingredient enjoyed by her rare and elusive followers. The mushrooms are brownish-white with a scaled cap. These caps can be used to make potions of lockpick fortification and health regeneration, but may conjure random fears in some who ingest it. The white-cap mushroom could be any of the many white mushroom varieties. A lot of these are poisonous, and this is no different, causing major harm to one's magical talents. However, if careful, an alchemist can reverse that harm into restoration of magic. Still, it resembles chlorophyllum molybdites, otherwise known as the vomiter. This alchemist suggests you avoid it altogether. Under the surface of Skyrim is a vast array of spacious caves known as Blackreach. Here grow giant luminescent mushrooms as well as other small plants along the ancient roads. Though there is only a small amount of plant life, there is much animal life, as well as that of the degenerated race of Falmer. Blackreach was also the scene of important alchemical research looking into the crimson Nirnroot variety. It was here that Sinderian, hero of alchemists everywhere, unfortunately met his end at the hand of the Falmer. After we discuss the rest of the ingredients native to Skyrim, we will look back upon his journey and the final entries of his journal. Found in the gorgeous underworld of Blackreach, the Crimson Nirnroot is quite the spectacle. Its red coloring is reminiscent of deep-sea fish, which maintain red pigmentation as fantastic camouflage. This is because red is one of the first colors lost at those depths. Here though, the red pigmentation is probably used to capture the low light levels in order to make the most of photosynthetic systems. This version of the Nirnroot, also producing some sort of mystical noise, is easily found by following the tune, as if it wants to be located. Some plants do release certain pheromones to send signals to other plants and animals for various reasons. For example, Manduca sexta, the tobacco hornworm, is a predator upon tobacco leaves as a larva. When it begins eating the leaves, the plant will send out hormones that attract a Polistes wasp, specifically so that it may eat the larva and protect the plant. Relationships like this are simply amazing. Another of these reasons is cultivation and proliferation of their species, something any farmer can do with plants, and especially fungi, whose microscopic spores are sent this way and that, much further than they could ever have gone through natural means. Perhaps this plant intentionally developed this method to contact humans and myrrh, almost as if it's asking for help to stave off extinction. When used in alchemy, it can create potions of invisibility and magic resistance. However, it is best employed as the single most devastating poison naturally concocted in the region, 3 times as potent as its surface counterpart. The Forgotten Vale is a valley located in the northwestern reaches of Skyrim, accessible only through dark and treacherous caves. Here, the ancient Falmer, then still intact, controlled the valley and used it as a place to worship Auriel. Now they inhabit the caves nested in the hills, and the primary opening of the vale plays host to a frozen lake, as well as frost-resistant plants and animals. This beautiful blue and purple flower is colored as if it was a poison frog, warning the potential predator to avoid it. If this is ignored, the imbiber may be wrapped in a strange fear as well as paralysis. This is a waking nightmare, seeing as how they are now a sitting duck for dangerous inhabitants of the vale these plants are endemic to. This flower, strangely growing only in the valleys near the Dawnguard headquarters, can make more efficient restoration fortification potions than other ingredients with the quality. It also offers poison resistance and health fortification. This is the last of the 4 mountain flowers to be found within Skyrim's borders. Only found in Darkfall Passage, this plant produces poisonous gas that harms everything around it. If carefully harvested, its blooms make a decent poison with an extra 50% effectiveness over other ingredients with this quality. It can be very hard to see in the dark, so one should be careful and aware of their surroundings. The island of Solstheim in the 4th era is quite different than that of the 2nd or 3rd. As a result of the Red Year, the island has been covered in ash spewed from Vardenfell's Red Mountain. This has altered the plant life as well as what creatures exist on the southern 2/3 of the island. To the north are still the frozen and icy caves the island is known for, and vegetation is quite sparse. Back to the southern regions, there have been many plants introduced, knowledgeably or otherwise, by the Redoran House as they fled the island of Vardenfell. Each of these aid the Dunmer in their continued survival, and some offer alchemical effects not seen elsewhere. Very similar to the strange creek clusters of Skyrim, this yellow variety survives primarily off of ash mineral deposits. It offers invisibility, blending into the wastes. It also offers fire resistance and destruction fortification, all effects which surround its survival in the face of the Red Year. The Solstheim variety of grass pod is another ingredient which seems to support the idea that plants in Tamriel can very quickly adapt their magical protections to new environmental conditions. In this case, the plant offers a strong fire resistance effect, as well as fortification to lockpicking and sneaking, great for a thief or assassin. After the Red Year, the Telvanni wizard Neloth moved to the island of Solstheim. He brought along spores for the Emperor Parasol mushrooms, which used to exist in the Ascadian Isles. Hanging from these mushrooms of Tel Mithrin is a moss that can be used to make better than average poisons. Alternatively, it can fortify magic and two-handed abilities, as well as regenerate health. Previously only available on the island of Vardenfell, Scathecraw has been introduced, intentionally or otherwise, to the island. Here it grows with a host of negative effects to ward potential predators away. These include ravaging of health, stamina, and magicka, as well as lingering health damage. This plant really wants to survive its new fate, and it seems that it will. Trauma roots in Solstheim offer fortification of carry weight, hinting at their true potential if growing on a more suitable island. They notably lack the levitation effect they held in Vardenfell. Apart from this, they are seen mostly as a traffic hazard and a pest when growing along buildings. Now that we have finished foraging, let us progress toward the animal life of the region. In the waters of Skyrim are a handful of fish species not found elsewhere. There is of course the common slaughterfish, though a much smaller variety than those found in Morrowind or Cyrodiil. These will be discussed a little later on. For now, let us get into the less dangerous species one can fish up for use in alchemical purposes. Named after the Abetian Sea and the southwest regions of Tamriel, this fish must be an invasive species brought along with travelers' boats. It can be used to fortify restoration and sneak, which may allude to its survival methods in new provinces. Despite the name longfin, this fish has the same length of fins as the other local species. Similar to the Abetian longfin, this fish must have been transported into the region somehow from Cyrodiil over the Jarl Mountains. It can be used to make poisons of fear, health ravaging, and stamina damage. Its tail is in the shape of a spade, hence the name, but this could also be said of the other fish sharing these waters. It's unknown why these fish are called hist carp, as they most likely do not come from the swampy waters of Black Marsh if they exist here. They do have magical effects of stamina restoration, magicka fortification, and water breathing. Perhaps there's a connection to the hist that we cannot visibly ascertain, allowing them to exist in this foreign matrix of waters. They do sport a pretty orange color, which makes them stand out among the rest. The river Betty is found in all bodies of water in the region, river or otherwise, calling to question why it was named such. Perhaps it was first found in a river. Either way, it contains a unique trait that allows production of damage health poisons with 2.5 times the effectiveness of normal ingredients. It has a burgundy color to its scales, not to be confused with the reddish Cyrodiilic spadetail. Beardiella chrysora is a common fish in Skyrim, growing in all water bodies. If netted, this fish can offer stamina restoration and frost resistance, again allowing this animal to survive the cold waters of the province. Believe it or not, the region of Skyrim boasts more reagents derived from creatures than any province we have discussed so far. Here, in succession, we will speak on each of them. When ground into powder, these claws offer a weak stamina restoration effect, as well as health and one-handed fortification. This alchemist wonders if the latter property has to do with bears using a specific hand when clawing their victims, but maybe bears are ambidextrous and this question is ridiculous. Probably that. The bees of Skyrim seem to be completely docile, not wanting to harm travelers even when they invade their nests. In fact, they are so calm that one can simply pluck them out of the air. After removing the stingers, these insects can be mixed with other reagents to form potions of stamina restoration and passive regeneration. Not only can one capture the bees themselves, but they can also purloin their homes. These hives have a range of positive effects, including a weak poison resistance and 3 skill fortifications, including light armor, sneak, and destruction. The grayish husk is very delicate and should be handled carefully. The blue butterflies of Skyrim can be found pollinating flowers all across the tundra. They alight upon the stems, feeding themselves and ensuring more flowers will grow. It is a good thing that Skyrim's butterflies breed so readily, as their wings are unfortunately required for a multitude of potions. They can be used to fortify conjuration and enchanting skills, great for the mage. This next bit of information I divulge is another secret best kept between alchemists. If combined with a giant's toe and a blue mountain flower, these wings will produce a potion that is quite lucrative. In fact, it's the second most expensive potion that one can create and sell across all the holds. I trust you will be moderate with both your collection and words. Found hovering above water bodies, the blue dartwing is fast and cautious. If one can manage to capture it, the dartwing can be used to make potions of shock resistance and health restoration. There are actually 2 types of dragonflies found in the province, and both varieties fortify pickpocketing skills. This calls to mind a certain yellow dragonfly who also fetches valuables. But back to the dartwings themselves, it makes sense to find them around water bodies. Like other dragonflies, it can be assumed that they live their first 2 years as larvae within the water, only flying as adults for about a week or 2. Though, unlike other dragonflies, these are actually not insects as they have 4 legs total, so they may have a different life cycle in terms of stage length. The ground bones of undead creatures have long been known to host interesting properties. Though telekinesis has long left the table, there still exist properties of fire resistance or conjuration boost. This means necromancers can fortify their abilities to conduct experiments by ingesting pieces of the subjects themselves. It seems we can add cannibalism to their list of misdeeds. The briarheart, a large seed from an unknown briar plant, is a rare and mysterious ingredient. Hag ravens, disgusting and evil creatures, replace the hearts of forsworn humans with these seeds. Somehow, the victim survives the process and gains magical powers as a result. These also translate to the ingredient effects by restoring and fortifying one's magica stores. Another common pollinator, the monarch butterfly communes with its blue-winged cousins around flowers below the snowline. Notably, there seems to be a lack of milkweed, the favorite plant of the specialist monarch butterfly in other provinces, meaning this could be a generalist variant. Here in the tundra, these butterflies are abundant. Outside of Nirn, however, lepidopterologists have placed them on the endangered list. They also lack magical properties in this dimension, but, in Skyrim, they can be used to make potions of health restoration and barter fortification. Their wings are staple products for healing supplies as a result. The eggs of the mysterious chorus creature are laid in large grotesque mounds. The thought of them all hatching at once is quite terrifying. If harvested before then, these faintly glowing eggs can be used to make potions of invisibility and stamina fortification, a great duo of effects, but unfortunately useless amongst the heightened hearing of the Falmer. Looking at a more familiar creature, the chicken's egg can be used for surprising effects. For one, they can allow the imbiber to resist magic, which is interesting. However, the real surprise is that they can allow one to breathe water. This alchemist is unsure of the connection, and further studies should be conducted to suss it out. Either way, it's a very useful effect, and farmers could make a killing if they knew what they had. A very rare and dangerous ingredient as always, the Daedra heart can be used to make potions of health restoration, but also poisons of stamina degeneration, magica damage, and fear. The type of fear embedded from arrows tipped in this poison is otherworldly, unknowable, and so it is great for those looking to cause lesser enemies to flee the scene. The oil of the Dwemer automatons is quite interesting. As with most oil of the type, it had to have come from some underground and long buried source of dead matter. Most often this would be plant matter. Interestingly enough, the alchemical effects of this oil are the exact same as those found in the Spriggan's taproot. These include illusion fortification, magic restoration and regeneration, and also weakness to magic. Is dwarven oil made of long dead Spriggans? Who's to say? Perhaps Spriggans simply have more in common with their environments than we previously knew. A residue left behind from unfortunate souls, ectoplasm can be used for a potion of magic restoration, fortification, and boost to destruction capabilities, although the latter is a somewhat weak effect. These properties probably tie into the fact that the spirit must be bound to the realm by some sort of magic, intentionally attributed or otherwise. The saber cat is a vicious and surprising encounter in the tundras, as they're skilled and careful hunters. If slain, their eyes can be removed and used for a number of purposes, though the most useful of these are potions of health and stamina restoration. It's recommended to either bring companions when hunting them or to hire mercenaries. Deep in the dark caverns of Blackreach, or in the Dwarven ruins, stalk the blind remnants of the Falmer race. If mercifully killed, the ears of these poor creatures can be put to alchemical use. They can create potions of chaotic frenzy and health damage, but are also useful for resisting such poisons and fortifying one's skill at picking locks. The only connection I can make to the final effect is that their sense of hearing is much heightened after their devolution, meaning they could hear every pin click as the probe worked its way. In Old Standby of the Mage, the fire salts of an Atronach can be used to offer fire resistance, magica restoration, and passive regeneration of magica on top. It seems the adventurers of Skyrim prefer to carve a bowl right out from the remaining husk of the Atronach, seeing as how it is streaked in magma. This is an interesting yet dangerous choice. The salts of the Frost Atronach mirror the flame variety, offering frost resistance instead, as well as magica restoration and conjuration fortification, meaning one could summon a continual army from these materials. If, that is, you can harvest the salts before their body returns to oblivion. The great giants of Skyrim are generally agreeable, keeping their distance so long as outsiders follow suit. However, if one strays too near their camp or mammoths, the giants can indeed become violent. Should one best a member of the towering tribes, they can remove their notably gross toes for alchemical work. These can be used to make potions of health fortification that last 5 minutes, making them an integral base for many lucrative concoctions as well as a useful standby. As giants are physically much stronger than outsiders, it stands to reason that these toes also offer fortification of one's own weight-carrying abilities. A very difficult to handle material, the remains of wisps and wisp mothers slide right through the fingers. If captured though, this dust can be used to make potions of destruction fortification and shock resistance, drawing on the frost damage abilities of these entities. The hag-ravens are a grotesque combination of old woman and bird, combined through some sort of ritual that is no doubt Daedric in nature, but mysterious to all aside from the Forsworn. These creatures are very dangerous and often employ flame magic to kill their enemies. If killed, the claws from their mangled hands can be ground and used in potions of magic resistance, as well as fortification of enchantment and bartering, perhaps drawing from their ill-conceived pact with the unknown Daedra. Unlike their claws, the feathers of the hagraven offer only one positive effect, fortification of conjuration magic. This could connect to their ability to keep Forsworn Briarhearts alive during rituals, as this is also used by necromancers in their evil activities. Flying around many of the settlements in Skyrim are hawks. Few opt to do this, but if one shoots them out of the sky, they will find many useful effects derived from their remains. From the beak specifically, they will find restoration of stamina, frost resistance for the cooler climate, fortification of carry weight, which one would think came from the feathers, and finally, shock resistance. There's a notable lack of marksman fortification, something one would expect, though that may come from the eyes in an as yet undiscovered property. The feathers of the hawks can be eaten in order to immediately cure any disease. Members of the Silver Hand, a group that hunts werewolves, carry them in case they're bitten during battle. They also boast fortification effects such as light armor, one-handed, and sneak, again missing the marksman effect. The light armor makes sense though, as they have to be light in order to fly. The final of 3 ingredients harvested from beehives, the honeycomb can be used in conjunction with its inhabitants for stamina restoration potions. It can also offer a weak fortification of block and a buff to light armor. Retrieval of the golden honeycomb is fairly easy, but one should wear chainmail gloves if available. The bees of Skyrim rarely sting, but when they do, it is painful. Also, bears frequent these locations to draw the honey as well, so one should be aware of their surroundings. Men and Mer often fall prey to the gnarlier creatures of Skyrim's deep caves. As such, dangerous locations may play host to occasional samples of human flesh. Pinching the nose, one can drink past the metallic taste of ground meat and garner effects of magic restoration, though this is quite an expensive cost. Poisons can also be made, including health damage and paralysis, but those probably come from the bad energies surrounding cannibalism. Similarly, the human heart can also be used in alchemy, though to no positive effect. Only poisons can be made, including damage to health and magicka as well as frenzy. Thankfully, most people will never come across this ingredient. The frozen incisors of the ice wraith can be broken off for use in potion making. They offer poisons of frost and flame weakness, but also potions of invisibility and heavy armor fortification, perhaps drawing on their camouflage into cold environments and ice-hard bodies. Interestingly, they also release an essence upon death that allows the imbiber to resist frost, which is completely opposite to what the teeth offer. Although a mystery as to why, it does seem the teeth themselves are indeed special as compared to the rest of the body. The large antlers of deer and elk, as opposed to the small variety, have had more time to grow and develop unique effects. They can be used for stamina restoration, perhaps drawing on the endurance of the prey animal. They can also be used to make poisons of slowing, which are strangely 6 times as effective as other ingredients with the property. This connection needs some study, but regardless, it is useful in times where one needs a quick escape. If crushed and ground, the wings of the beautiful Luna moth will disappear into an almost invisible powder, and one which will give the consumer the same effect. They also offer health regeneration and light armor fortification, maybe drawing from their nearly intangible weight. Much like with the butterflies, it's a shame that these beautiful creatures must be caught for this usage. Still, there are other ways to make potions of invisibility, such as mixing the ice wraith teeth with the less admirable chorus eggs. The chitin of the common mud crab, much bulkier here than in Cyrodiil, can be used for a host of positive effects. Restore stamina, cure disease, resist poison, and resist fire. These make for a great cure-all, and, since mud crabs are abundant all throughout the province, supply is certainly there. Their meat is also useful in local cuisine, so hunting these creatures is typically worthwhile. Although most barnacles are marine-specific invertebrates, the Skyrim variety seem to pop up in many locations. These creatures feed on nutrients floating through the water, often hitching themselves to boat holes for stability. If pried loose, they can be crushed for use in water-breathing potions, owing to their adaptations. A relative of the blue dartwing, the orange variety also hovers above water bodies in Skyrim. They similarly offer fortification of pickpocketing, as well as basic stamina restoration. It's unknown whether the effects come from the chitin or the wings, as the creature is relatively small. This variety also has a subtle blue banding along its tail that is visually appealing. The pine thrush, an elusive bird, leaves its eggs and nests throughout the rift. These large eggs can be used to restore stamina, resist shock, and fortify lockpicking abilities, strangely relevant to the common lifestyles of the region. Also, this would be a good time to highlight the peculiar nesting practices of birds in the province. All of them seem to lay a single egg, and even then, they mostly lay them on the ground. This seems to be a very dangerous strategy. Most birds are K-selected species, meaning they have a few offspring that typically live a longer time. However, the energy trade-off to produce but a single large egg, then allow it to be vulnerable on the ground, is perplexing. Maybe the birds have multiple nesting sites, lay eggs quickly, or a combination of the two. In the Reach, there is an occasional nest one will come across, often on the ground between rocks. These contain the greenish eggs of the rock warbler, luckily blending into the environment. If noticed and taken, they can be used to restore health. However, it should be noted that the bird does not lay many eggs, and there are far more common ingredients that restore health. This alchemist advises against poaching these eggs. The second and final ingredient to be taken from dead saber-tooths, the fang itself can be used for stamina restoration as well as fortification of heavy armor and smithing. These effects are mysterious coming from the tundra beast, but exist all the same. If hunting them, one could take their teeth, make better armor, rinse and repeat. Harvested from the pestilent rodents of ruins and sewers, the skeever tails offer mostly detrimental effects. There is one positive effect, fortification of light armor, which makes sense as the skeever is a very soft-furred creature. As these are a common pest species, it is currently acceptable for them to be hunted with abandon. The eggs of the common slaughterfish are often found along the shores of water bodies. This is a bit strange as it makes them easier targets for birds and other predators, but may also protect them from larger slaughterfish that roam the bottoms and can't reach shallow waters of the riparian zone. If taken, these eggs can be mixed into potions of poison resistance and stamina fortification. Should the parent of these eggs note your attack, you can dispatch them and remove their scales. Unfortunately, the slaughterfish of Skyrim do not offer effects of water breathing or walking, but instead fortification of heavy armor and block, two effects which do make sense coming from the very armor of the fish. In order to gather this material, one must stay along the banks, taunt the fish in your direction, then attack them from above. The small antlers of female elk and deer can be used to fortify restoration. The effect is rarely worth the effort, and this alchemist recommends allowing the doe to remain alive for proliferation of their species. There are, of course, other means to gain the same effect, such as through the natural marine salts of the region, as well as the pearls which grow in these aquatic environments. Cracking open the giant egg husks of frostbite spiders will reveal green eggs, each of which containing a potential beast. These spiders are incredibly dangerous and a large nuisance in the province, especially due to their size and resistance to cold temperatures. This alchemist suggests harvesting them for potion making, as they can offer enhanced vision for marksmanship, most likely drawing from the way they spew their venom. This venom can also be gathered from the fangs of a defeated spider as a weak poison. Beyond these use cases, I suggest flaming or smashing the excess brood. They will always have another web somewhere. Within the densely wooded areas of Skyrim exist the mystical Spriggan. Their gnarled forms are even more camouflaged here than in the other provinces. They seemingly come from nowhere, but often step out of tree trunks to ambush the opponent. One should be very careful when hunting them down. The goal reagent from this endeavor, the taproot of the Spriggan, can be pulled from their bodies after defeat. If this is done, one can reap the benefits of illusion fortification, magic restoration, and magic regeneration. The torch bugs, glowing by result of luciferin in their abdomens, much like the glowing mushrooms of Tamriel, can often be found pollinating plants at night. If caught, they can be used to restore and fortify stamina. These effects can readily be found elsewhere, so it's best to leave these visual marvels alone. There is always a balance to be kept, and these insects are part of what allows us to find many of the forageable ingredients we've already discussed. The trolls of Skyrim can be found roaming the wilds as well as caves. They are just as fearsome as those in Cyrodiil, but if felled, they can offer effects of poison resistance and two-hand fortification. The fat can also be sold for 15 gold apiece, which may be more efficient than using them in personal concoctions. Forever existent, the immortal vampires also exist in Skyrim. Some clans here have more power than others, but all the same, they will turn partially to dust when killed. This dust, more difficult to acquire and handle than is ever possibly necessary, can be used for the following effects: invisibility, magic restoration, health regeneration, and disease cure, the latter of which only occurs as Noxophilic Sanguivoria cannot be outcompeted by common malaise. Coming from the Storm Atronachs, void salts can be used to make others weak to shock, as well as provide the imbiber with magic fortification and resistance. These salts are also rumored to enhance the quality of a certain armor set, bestowed upon those faithful to the Nocturnal. There is but one Daedric prince I find amicable, and so I know not whether this is true. A thin, nearly intangible sheet of otherworldly fabric can be taken from the bodies of defeated wisp mothers. These have all positive effects, including restoration of stamina, fortification of destruction and carry weight, and finally, resistance to magic. All of these connect to the light, spiritual, and magical origins of the mysterious entity. Only found in the Ancestor Glade, these moths blend in very well with their environment. They are said to surround and be attracted to Elder Scrolls. I assume this is part of why those who study the scrolls are called moth priests. Either way, if captured, their wings offer fortification of conjuration and enchantment. Coming from the evolved forms of land-based chorus, the winged chorus hunter's antenna can be used to fortify conjuration and enchanting, much akin to the ancestor moths. This may be due to their shared heritage as insect or bug-like creatures. These eggs can only be found on the roof of Helyarchen Hall or the Lakeview Manor, meaning that hawks are incredibly selective about where to store their young. Unfortunately for them, they are not selective enough. These can be easily harvested and used in alchemy. Strangely, they offer magic resistance and water-breathing effects. Every now and then one should be careful to allow them to hatch, so as to not disturb the balance. These unfertilized eggs can be harvested from jumping salmon or from salmon that are specifically killed with the thuum. This row is important to every maximum value potion in the region due to the difficulty of harvest and fragility of handling. The most expensive combination of all is adding this with garlic and Nordic barnacles, providing a potion with many strong effects. If used in personal endeavors, they can offer water breathing and magic restoration. From the sandy wastes of modern Solstheim hop a bug-like creature called an ashhopper. Ashhoppers, very similar to the scribs of mainland Morrowind, have innards that behave like a congealed jelly. This can be used to restore health and resist shock. As these bugs breed quickly and in large number, they can be hunted without worry. This tusk is seen as somewhat of an aphrodisiac in the province of Skyrim, and potions with its inclusion can sell for high value. It does fortify stamina and health, as well as the ability to block incoming attacks. It's interesting that these tusks do not provide frost resistance, though perhaps that is no longer needed post the Red Year tragedy. Blending into their new environment, the Spriggans of Solstheim have now developed the ash-brown color of dead wood. If bested, they offer wood which contains properties for strong poisons. These include weakness to fire, damage to magic regeneration, and slowness. These would be an ironic poison to use upon their more common counterparts in other regions, or even nearby Skyrim. Named after the northeastern regions of Solstheim, the Felsad tern is a white bird which flies high above the settlement of Ravenrock. If sniped, their wings can be harvested for potions of health restoration, light armor fortification, an effect often seen in birds, disease cure, and magic resistance. It's a wonder these birds are still in existence since they offer so many positive effects. I indeed felt sad when I saw the bird fall. Some of the surviving netches of the Red Year managed to float across the Sea of Ghosts toward the island of Solstheim. Many people on the island hunt them for sustenance, unfortunately. If killed, their jelly can be harvested for potions of carry weight fortification, owing to their floating capabilities. However, the more important effect is stamina restoration. Stamina restoration potions made with this material will be twice as effective as other reagents. This may owe to their endurance as they crossed the Sea of Ghosts. What you are seeing here is a simulated reenactment of how a battle with these gentle creatures would go. Luckily, there is no need to conduct such a vicious act. These beautiful pearls come from oysters off the bank of Solstheim. Different from those of Vardenfell, these are a strange blue color. This may be due to the effects of the eruption and upwelling of detritus, which is pulled into the clams and used to create these pearls. Before the Red Year, all pearls found were white, leading to this conclusion. If used in alchemical pursuits, these offer fortification of block, which makes sense as clams have hard shells. Sometimes the pearls of Solstheim's oysters can be harvested earlier in development. If so, they can be used to fortify one-handed combat skills and restore stamina. Finally, we come to the last target of our hunt. A mysterious magic has caused the ash of the island to form into some sort of atronach, a creature that kills any and all in its path. They're said to rise from the cremated remains of those killed during the primary impact of Red Mountain's eruption. Others say they did not rise alone, and suggest necromancy was afoot. In either case, if destroyed, the ash creatures dissolve into their namesake. Once harvested, this material can be used to resist fire and fortify enchanting abilities. Skyrim, although not the metropolitan hub that Cyrodiil is, can still be counted on to host exotic ingredients from other lands. These are typically sold through shops or Khajiit caravans, but some also exist as common loot one can find lying about. Let us look at these final reagents. These leaves, imported to Skyrim through the Khajiit caravans, may very well come from the other side of the Jarl Mountains. Much like in its home province of Cyrodiil, this plant offers health restoration, but also stamina restoration and invisibility. The last effect is a bit of a surprise, suggesting that the time spent in transit through the mountains may allow other properties to wane and new ones to awaken. A common foodstuff in times of desperation, this meat is gamey and probably just as greasy as typical rat meat. Even though this is very unappetizing as a meal, it is quite useful as a reagent. This hide can produce potions of health and stamina restoration, as well as a cheap disease cure and poison resistance. It is surprising that there are so many positive effects to be rendered once all the negatives are cooked out. If you do not want to cook it by yourself, you may find these being roasted by campers, be them friendly, bandit, or giant. It is not known from what province the elf's ear comes, but this plant is often found hanging in residential and market spaces. If mixed with other ingredients, they can produce potions of magic restoration, fire resistance, and marksman fortification. The final effect, as well as the name of the ingredient, call to mind the Bosmer home of Valenwood. However, it would be against the Green Pact to harvest and remove plant life from the region. Still, not all follow the ways of Y'ffre, so it is entirely possible. Much like the Elves' Ear, the Frost Miriam must be imported into the province. It can be used to make potions of frost resistance and sneak fortification, perfect for stealthy missions where the sound of crunching snow is a dead giveaway. In fact, it seems the plant would be at home growing in Skyrim, though there are no commonly known locations or farms for such a plant in the province. Another common import into Skyrim is garlic, though this may not be from Cyrodiil as its alchemical effects are completely different. The travel time and shift in climate could have some effect, but this is yet to be studied. What we do know is that these garlic plants offer poison resistance, stamina fortification, and passive regeneration of magic and health. Strangely enough, the sale of moon sugar seems not to be prohibited in this province. Perhaps the war and the release of dragons back into the holds has temporarily lessened attention to the drug. Either way, it can be purchased from smugglers and Khajiit caravans for use in potions of magic restoration and regeneration, as well as frost resistance. Alternatively, it can be mixed into skooma, a dangerous drug we have discussed on a few occasions. Only the giants are strong enough to crush the tusks of their mammoths, according to Quintus Navali of the White File. It is unknown if he has a trade agreement with them, but someone must, as the material is otherwise unobtainable. If one happens to get their hands on it, they may be disappointed to note that they only offer stamina restoration and sneak fortification. Harvested in massive quantities by sailors of Tamriel, the salts of the oceans can be used to cure meats and mix with a variety of food for taste. If mixed into potions, they can offer restoration boosts as well as magic regeneration. Notably, this is the only completely inorganic reagent in our discussion of Skyrim. It comes from the erosion of sodium and chloride from terrestrial rocks, which are carried into the oceans from rivers, streams, and so on. The syrup-like sap of mystical spriggans can be used for fortification of 3 skills: enchanting, smithing, and alteration. These are very interesting effects, all of them having to do with creation. Perhaps these connect to the spriggan's oneness with nature and life in general. Although many would assume you could stick a spigot into a spriggan and get the sap, it must not be true. The ingredient is quite rare to find, and unfortunately, the particular methods of its extraction are unknown to me. As mentioned earlier, the practice of alchemy was somewhat diminished with the common perception of the Mages Guild having changed in the face of the Oblivion Crisis. The guild funded, housed, and fed many practitioners, and so the ones that do exist are often somewhat hard to find. Luckily, this alchemist knows just who to go to for training, if, that is, you are not easily scared. Within the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary, you may find a young lady named Babette. Indeed, you would be fooled, for she is actually a 300-year-old vampire. Bitten as a child, Babette has maintained her youthful appearance, and now acts as a very efficient assassin. Aside from her more divisive talents, Babette is also the most skilled alchemist in all of Skyrim. This is due in no small part to her creation of poisons for her particular line of work. However, if allowed into the sanctuary through discreet channels, Babette will offer training to one of the arts. Now we should discuss a dear old friend named Sindirian. As you may recall, he was the single most achieved alchemist in Cyrodiil. Working out of a small basement lab, he uncovered many secrets of the Nirn root, including its capability to magically prepare itself for changing environmental conditions. This work was based upon studies by Shivius Regelium, and his contributions should be noted as well. One day, a traveler from Skyrim brought a Nirn root to Sindirian's lab in Cyrodiil. For his troubles, he was given 1,000 septums. Why exactly? Well, this particular Nirn root was a different color and said to grow in a cave called Blackreach. Sindirian immediately sold most of his belongings and moved to Skyrim. He eventually stayed at the Cyrodiil farm, and in exchange for housing, he taught Avrusa Cyrodiil how to grow Nirn root. Eventually, he found his way into the dark subterranean caverns of Blackreach and began to study the Nirn root. Before he could really dig in, however, he was attacked by the Falmer. Dead, lying in his new research lab for at least 143 years to date, according to his notes, he would be forever assaulted by the sound of the Crimson Nirn root. How unfair an end this was for poor Sindirian, a hero in our field. Our one true hope now lies with the Cyrodiil family, and Avrusa specifically. Sindirian believed the Nirn root was still in danger of becoming extinct, and Avrusa may just be the one to save it. Fortunately, his journal was recovered, and so we can read his final discoveries here. Sindirian's Field Journal, 4th Era 58, 2nd Seed, Middas. I've spent a large portion of my life unraveling the mystery of the Nirn root, and yet I still feel unfulfilled. The trilling sound the strange herb emits seems to taunt me, to push me even harder to discover its secrets. Even after a generous and indomitable traveler became a field collector in my stead, and provided me with 5 score of the Nirn root, I was only able to muster what I consider a mediocre alchemical creation at best. This only served to strengthen my hunger and whet my appetite for the solution. It wasn't until over 50 years later that the answer to my prayers was carried into my basement workshop at the Westweald Inn. The first thing I heard was the familiar tone, that unmistakable warble unique to the Nirn root. But when I turned around, my heart leapt and a chill ran down my spine. This was indeed a Nirn root, but of a variety the likes of which I had never seen. The herb was awash in a spectacular array of red hues, each leaf seemingly emblazoned with innumerable variations of crimson. I couldn't move. I was completely transfixed. Never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined a species of Nirn root with such a unique property. After an awkward silence, I finally managed to stammer out a few questions to the traveler who'd brought me this treasure. He told me his name was Obeth Arnesian, a treasure seeker from Skyrim. Apparently he'd been exploring a vast subterranean network of grand caverns called Blackreach, and had stumbled across what he dismissed as a noisy red weed. His expedition was largely unsuccessful, and he didn't want to leave the caves empty-handed, so Obeth picked one of the Crimson Nirn root to bring home. He said that it took some time, but eventually he was pointing my way, and that perhaps I'd pay a fair price for it. Before I could gather my wits and ask anything else, Obeth offered to sell me the Crimson Nirn root sample, a map showing me how to find Blackreach, and the strange key needed to breach its outer defenses. It took me mere moments to decide. Obeth left Skingrad 1,000 septums richer, but I would have easily paid 10 times that amount to obtain the sample alone. It took a year of planning, but I was able to pack up and sell my workshop and make my way into Skyrim. Before delving headfirst into Blackreach, I knew I needed to set up a new laboratory, but wished to do so in seclusion. After making inquiries at the College of Winterhold, of which I was an honorary member, I was directed to speak to Avrusa Cyrodiil, a student of botanical alchemy who had a small farm near the city of Riften. By bartering my knowledge of Nirn root cultivation, I was able to secure Cyrodiil Farm as a launching point for my field research. I kept the knowledge of the Crimson Nirn root a secret from Avrusa, but imparted everything else I knew to her, in exchange for her hospitality. A few months passed, but I was finally ready to enter Blackreach. I used the rune lexicon that Obeth had provided and descended into the depths. My goal was to gather enough Crimson Nirn root to produce my greatest alchemical creation to date. I was certain it would take at least 30 of them to provide the necessary catalyst. This brings me to the present. My initial research seems to indicate that the Crimson Nirn root has a similar affinity for moisture as the garden variety, but also maintains some sort of symbiotic relationship with the enormous fungi that inhabits Blackreach. It's my guess that the fungi itself is a source of water, absorbing it from the moist subterranean air like a sponge. This provides the ideal environment for the Nirn root to grow. Unfortunately, the Crimson Nirn root appears to have a vastly shortened lifespan, and they are no way plentiful down here. Gathering 30 of them will be quite the challenge, but hopefully the denizens of Blackreach will allow me to gather my samples unhindered. Sadly, this did not age well. The idea that the mushrooms are taking in moisture and relaying it to the Crimson Nirn root is fascinating. However, this revelation is overshadowed by the sad ending of the journal, full of hope and intrigue he was never able to satisfy. There may be a small glimmer of hope after all. It has been rumored that Avrusa, with the help of an adventurer, was able to secure a large amount of the Crimson Nirn root. In exchange, she taught them how to produce 2 potions from the ingredients of one, calling it Sindirian's Serendipity, a name of which I approve. Next is a short read of some alchemical journals found randomly in my travels. Their authors and purposes are of unknown origin, but it's still enjoyable to read of others' interest in the alchemical discipline. Setting up camp here near this mushroom grove. Interested in seeing what exactly is causing their enhanced growth in this area. Today I'll be heading out to see what kind of effect the mushrooms and nearby Nirn root are having on the ecosystem downstream. Coming to this area was a brilliant decision. The local flora seem to have many useful properties that I've been able to utilize into new potions. Outside, the rich soil has allowed the cuttings I've collected to grow into fine and bountiful plants. This afternoon, I think I'll journey out for more mushrooms as my current supply is beginning to dwindle. On a personal note, I have moved my alchemy work outside the shack. I find the midday air is a boon to my health as well as inspirational to my work. The following is a reading of the Illustrated Herbalist's Guide to Skyrim. The Herbalist's Guide to Skyrim, Agnita Folia. Those avoiding this northern province due to claims of barbarism or concerns over climate are doing themselves a disservice. In fact, Skyrim has a wealth of materials that every alchemist would do well to avail himself of. I have traveled extensively throughout this land, and here are but a few of my findings. The Bleeding Crown. The caps of these mushrooms do indeed appear smeared with blood, though it is often hard to see in the dark, damp places in which they grow. Not uncommonly found in Skyrim, their abundance is countered by the difficulty in acquiring them. As any experienced herbalist knows, the darkest of caves often conceal far more than mere mushrooms. Nonetheless, these potent fungi, when combined with certain powdered antlers, produce a mixture rendering one quite susceptible to poison. Their usefulness is also quite apparent when mixed with lavender, creating a substance highly resistant to magic. The Deathbell. Folklore abounds about this flower found in the swamps of Hjalmarch. Some stories claim it grows where unfortunate deaths have taken place. Others insist it grows first and then lures unsuspecting people and animals to their doom. I have found no direct evidence to support these theories. Indeed, I found the flowers difficult to locate at all. While it is most well known for its use in poisons, it would be remiss to overlook that the blooms of the Deathbell are very effective in mixtures for boosting one's alchemy skill. The Dragonfly. A surprising number of insects survive in Skyrim's climate, many thriving in the lower southern areas of the province. Dragonflies can be found in a great many places, and while catching them can be a daunting prospect, the reward is well worth the effort. It was beyond the scope of my research to determine whether the orange and blue dragonflies are fully different breeds or merely simple color variations, but through experimentation I found that the orange dragonfly, when combined with the very hardy barnacles found along the coast, transfers some of their flighty nature, giving the herbalist some very nimble fingers. The Hagraven Claw. The claws of a hagraven are best obtained in shops. It is inadvisable to suggest one collects them oneself. These creatures have traded in their humanity for access to powerful magics, and the transformations they undergo infuse their entire beings with some element of that power. Ingesting the powdered claws makes one more resistant to magic, but an especially curious property of the claws is revealed when mixed with snowberries, often found in Skyrim's higher elevations. I found myself capable of comprehending enchantments I had believed mystifying after ingesting the mixture, and have passed this knowledge on to several court wizards who were grateful for the knowledge. The Jazbay. There was a time when it would be considered treason to pick one of these grapes without express permission of the Emperor himself. It is my understanding that although growers in Skyrim were successful in improving the fruit's survivability, it came at the cost of flavor. No longer is it quite the prize it once was, and yet, growing amidst the volcanic tundra of Eastmarch, it is still immensely useful for concocting potions. Mages value it highly as it can be combined with simple garlic to enhance the regeneration of magicka. While no longer against the law, picking these grapes in large amounts is best kept to oneself. The Lunamoth Wing. As with the dragonflies, I was taken aback by the number of butterflies, moths, and other insects that managed to thrive in Skyrim. The Luna moth is especially beautiful. Its thin, almost ephemeral wings seem too delicate to hoist anything into the air, giving them an almost magical appearance. Indeed, that sense extends to the properties they exhibit when crushed and distilled, an action I admit was difficult to perform at first, no matter my resolve to discover all that Skyrim has to offer. These creatures are simply that beautiful. While they can be used for creating poisons that damage magicka, I feel that would be a waste of their potential. Do not be alarmed if, when the wings are broken down almost completely, they appear to almost disappear under your mortar. That very quality makes the wings quite effective in potions of invisibility. Tundra Cotton. Not all Nords are savages wrapped in animal skins, howling at the moon. There are a wide variety of fabrics worn throughout the land, thanks in no small part to the stubborn tundra cotton plant. It soaks up what rain it can in the plains west of Whiterun, and blooms frequently. While it does not exhibit any of the more striking alchemical properties, it is a staple in potions for not only fortifying magicka, but for resisting spells as well. I wonder if that quality is what allows it to have adapted so well to this climate. Nightshade. The name and shape of this plant are known to all. Long understood to be one of the more potent components in many poisons, the average Nord keeps his distance from the bright purple flowers nestled among dark leaves. It is exceedingly effective as a pure poison, but can also be combined with other compounds to stiffen joints as well. It is thus favored among those who wish to disable their opponents in battle, and can be found coating the blades of many of the more unsavory characters in Skyrim. The following book is a reprint of the Dreamstride, a tome of mystical information. The Dreamstride, the mysterious alchemists of Vermina. For over 1,000 years, the priests of Vermina have been masters of the art of alchemy. The complexity and potency of their mixtures are nothing short of legendary. These alchemical treasures are so highly sought after that a single draught showing up on the black market can command sums in the tens of thousands of septims. Of the numerous potions that have surfaced to date, Vermina's torpor is perhaps the most impressive. A single sip of this viscous liquid places the imbiber in a state known as the Dreamstride. This condition allows the subject to experience the dreams of another as if they were actually there. The subject becomes an integral part of the dream, behaving as if they belong. To any other entities in this dream state, the subject will be mistaken for the dreamer. The subject will even find his mannerisms, speech patterns, and knowledge expanded appropriately. To an observer, after the subject has imbibed the potion, they will appear to vanish. As the subject traverses distances within the dream, they will also be traversing distances in the real world. When the torpor's effect has expired, the subject will fade back into reality in the exact location projected within the Dreamstride. Some Dreamstrides have transported their subjects a few feet, and some have appeared thousands of miles from their origin in a matter of minutes. It's to be noted that the Dreamstride is highly dangerous and presents the subject with numerous pitfalls. In certain dreams, subjects have been exposed to life-threatening scenarios such as sicknesses, violence, and even death. In most cases, the subject simply fades back to our world without harm. But in some instances, the subject never reappeared and was assumed to have expired, or the subject reappeared deceased. It's also quite possible that the subject could reappear in a precarious or hazardous location in reality, even though that location appeared safe within the Dreamstride. Vermina's torpor is as mysterious and elusive as the priests that created it. It's unknown whether this unique transport mechanism is a result of the torpor itself, or simply the odd machinations of Vermina, but the potential for using the Dreamstride to penetrate seemingly impassable obstacles certainly outweighs its mysterious nature. After learning of the miasma, this alchemist would suggest staying away from Vermina and all who follow her, for you never know where they may try to send you. Among the wild-caught ingredients, the people from which one can learn, and the new books upon the subject of alchemy, there is also a more comfortable, personal means of studying the craft. Indeed, devout researchers in Skyrim may come across the means to have their own personal alchemical garden. If they manage to become Thane of certain holds, those Jarls often grant them permission to own land. Upon this land, custom houses can be built to the adventurer's own specifications. For example, this home in Falkreath Hold, known as Lakeview Manor. It can be built to contain a variety of uses for the alchemist. Firstly, there is a small garden plot just outside the entryway. Here, one can grow ingredients exposed to the elements for those who do best in those conditions. Second, there is a gorgeous greenhouse wing that can be built onto the home. Pollinators abound, flying in and out through windows, enjoying whatever grows within. There are many planters, more than enough to grow one's favorite forageable ingredients. Here one can take their time, savoring both the intrinsic beauty of the reagents as well as their magical properties. And where better to discover these than in one's own alchemy tower? Toward the back of the home, one can build a strong tower big enough for one researcher to comfortably work in. Along with many containers, samples, and lights, this tower also comes with its own alchemy table. No matter the hour, the day, the season, an alchemist can spend their time in the tower brewing concoctions and uncovering the mystical effects of each ingredient. Beyond homes built by or for the adventurer, there is also the grand alchemical garden of the Archmage at the College of Winterhold. Although accessible only to they who hold the title, one cannot dismiss the usefulness or beauty of such a magically cultivated garden. Although some view Skyrim as maintaining the same cold, harsh climates all throughout, there are actually plenty of different ecosystems at play. Each of them offer plants, fungi, and animals that can be used to produce potions of various effects. The consolidation of alchemy apparatus into a single table can be limiting, but it also means the common alchemist does not need to carry heavy materials with them all across the mountainous landscapes of the province. It is a shame that the practice of alchemy, and indeed magic in general, has been somewhat vilified following the Oblivion Crisis. Still, many alchemists do remain, hosting shops or practicing their craft at home. Skyrim, just as much as Morrowind or Cyrodiil, can hold many magical secrets for those with the urge to find them. Now that I've had my fun speaking in universe, let's talk just a little more about alchemy in these games and why it's so fascinating. I've spoken in the past about how the mushroom trees of Morrowind have led me to finding enjoyment in growing fungi. or even how the process of alchemy has led me to my current job as a laboratory technician. Beyond this though, I want to highlight just how cool alchemy is intrinsically as well as within the series specifically. Alchemy is considered the process of deriving something from another thing, or perhaps from nothing itself, the purest form that could ever be acquired. Now, I tend to be a bit of a nerd, not that any of you would guess, but every time I look at a plant or mushroom, I wonder what potion it could make if it were magical. Would the leaves of this tree make me levitate as high as the trunk? Would coating my tongue with bolete mushroom spores allow me to walk on water? Would eating the ashes of my dead relatives allow me to more easily clean my house? Okay, scratch that last one. But honestly, there is so much enjoyment to be found in this. In the case of Camellia sinensis, we can make teas, a real honest potion. There are so many types as well, same goes for coffee. In a world where everything seems predetermined, where knowledge is constantly at our disposal, yet we lack the time to make use of it, and where creative fantasy sits in the background compared to the menial labors in which we toil, the idea of alchemy is simply phenomenal. You all have done me a great service by watching this video and joining me for the ride. Before I thank everyone for real, I want to reward you for making it this far. Remember the potion we brewed earlier? The cranberry juice comes from the reconstituted pink oyster mushrooms I grew myself and harvested in August of 2023. The ground elf cups are those same oyster mushrooms. The ground beetles are lavender pieces. The resin is just honey. And finally, the ectoplasm is incense from these sticks on my soon-to-be alchemy table. I am now going to actually drink it. Some of the more eagle-eyed viewers have probably noticed that I did not drink the actual potion that I made. Instead, it was pumpkin spice tea, which was actually wonderful. Now, this is the potion that I made. And yeah, I think I decided, you know, if you watch to the end of the video, you're going to actually get to see this, so let me give you a top-down view real quick. Yeah, that is, in the words of Cyrus, that is truly vile. Oh my god. Okay. Alright, wish me luck on this one. Okay everyone, you can see that this is the real deal. I swear I'm drinking it. I swear I'm drinking the actual thing. I'm not gonna drink a lot because, oh man, it smells like mushrooms with the slightest hint of sweetness to it because of the honey. Oh man, this is not going to go down easy. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you. I'm going to drink like one sip and I'll tell you how it is with all the bits in it. All right, let's go. Okay. Oh my god. That was real. Okay, it tasted like, obviously sweet because of the honey, but once the mushroom part hits you, oh my gosh, that was reflexive. Oh man. Was that worth it? You let me know. I hope you all enjoyed this journey. Although it seems these videos appear far apart, they take me lots of effort each day to create piece by piece. I would like to thank you all for watching and request that you consider liking and subscribing for more. This helps the channel and me out a lot. I would also like to thank my patrons for being patient with my production, including Koan, Rachel, and Rumor Raisin. Many thanks to you all. And finally, I'd like to ask, what is your favorite type of potion to make? Do they change with your playstyle? Have you ever done a challenge to collect every type of reagent? Please let me know in the comments. With that, it is time once more for me to go back to Onyx Caverns. See you all in my next adventure. Bye for now.